What's going on, everybody? Hope you're doing well. Welcome to another episode of Heavy Metallurgy. It is number 269. Hope you had a good week. It's Friday. Here in the U.S., it's a holiday weekend for all of you that celebrate. Happy 4th. And I'm joined by two other fine young gentlemen, one of which is the best co-host on the YouTubes. Alan, how you doing, my friend?
I'm doing pretty good. Happy 4th of July to folks out there. Hope everyone is finding ways to beat the heat. Big chunk of the United States is in kind of a massive heat wave right now. It's been pretty nasty. I handle the heat pretty well, and it's borderline too hot for me outside these days. So, yeah, everybody take it easy this weekend. Have fun. Stay safe. Stay cool. Definitely keep an eye on yourself and your friends. Don't overheat. It is not something you want to deal with this weekend.
My house is like an ice box, and that's just the way I like it.
Good deal.
We are also joined, first timer on the channel. You may have seen this guy over on Gas Masks and Hand Grenades. He's also a frequent chatter here in the chat and also on the Discord server. We got Peter from Ireland, who runs the Metal Vault on Instagram. Welcome, Peter. How you doing, man?
Yeah, thanks for having me. Thanks for the invite.
Oh, thank you for joining us. We know it's late over there, so we really appreciate you making the effort to pull the late nighter here for us.
Well, Ireland, let's talk about how you got into metal and what started this crazy obsession that we all share of being, collector scum. Because that's what we are. Let's be honest with each other.
I think it was probably the age I am. I'm 48 now, so it was in the 80s. Late 80s, I had older cousins who would be into sort of rock metal at the time. Actually got into metal through the likes of Poison, Skid Row, Whitesnake, sort of hair metal type stuff.
Yep.
That was the kind of stuff they were, older cousins giving you records or tapes to dub onto TDKs, and not long after that, then digging a bit deeper myself and getting to the likes of Metallica. It's kind of typical story for most people my age, and then discovered thrash and then death metal by about 91, 92, and that was me hooked in. One of the bands we're going to talk about probably tonight is My Dying Bride. Discovered them, discovered Anathema, Paradise Lost, and then black metal, and then it took over, and it more or less dominated my listening for most of the 90s. Still does.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought Death Doom was probably an earlier love than black metal.
As a younger guy growing up, I mean, you're kind of right in the epicenter, right in the area where, the Peaceful Three and, what Ireland isn't, Morning Beloved, they're from there too, aren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely a rich history of this type of music. Was this something you gravitated towards, or the black metal kind of took over all of that?
Oh, it was definitely like thrash then through the death metal. So like 91. See, it got into Sepultura, discovered them with their eyes.
Yeah.
Then always looking for something a bit more extreme, a bit harder. Discovered Dismember, like an ever-flowing stream.
Yep.
Through Crying, actually, because Crying used to do a weekly independent metal top 10, and that was number one. So me and my friends decided to check it out. Morbid Angel, Bless All Is Sick. Those are the albums that were coming out at the time. Obituary was massive here. Cause of Death had just been out, and then The Incomplete was quite big. And it was just Carcass. Necroticism had come out as well. And I actually seen a video of that from an old TV show on a Friday night called Raw Power. It used to be a magazine called Raw, and had a TV show, and it just showed videos of all different types of metal. And I was just hooked, and I just wanted to find out more. And I suppose I was fortunate here in that the nearest city to me is Belfast, and it had 6 or 7 independent music shops, and 2 of them specialized in metal.
Oh, cool.
So it was just going up, and they were having all the latest releases, and that's where I found the Emperor and Slave split.
Yep.
And Pale Nazarene, stuff like that there. And then also lucky that I actually started a shop in my town, sold Metal Maniacs. So I was in this wee little sort of wool shop, and I had a wee small stationery section then with some magazines, and there was Metal Maniacs all the way from America. And started buying that, and then Terrorizer magazine came out when I was 15, 16, 93, and that was probably the big game changer for me, because it was delving into bands like Doom, the early black metal stuff. There was a writer for that magazine called Russ Smith, and he was in the book scenes, and he was getting all the stuff from Norway before anyone else, and he was reviewing it and then giving you the addresses for the bands to go order the demos. And so I was just got straight into the sort of ordering, putting the old paper and or money disguised in envelopes and sending off for stuff, hoping it would be returned. So you get something a few months later, maybe a couple of CDs. But
Yep.
yeah, and then just pen pal writing around Europe mainly, and then some friends in South America I met back in the 90s, and I'm still in touch with some of them. So just recommending music and dive straight in, and haven't stopped since.
Yeah.
Very cool. How was the live scene at Belfast? Did a lot of bands come through there that you got to see, or did they tend to bypass that and stick more to, London or other places?
Yeah, it was difficult. You would get some big bands. You get the likes of Slayer, Megadeth, Carcass would play. There was an old bar in Belfast called the Rosetta Bar. Bands like Carcass would have played there. Got to see Sepultura and Paradise Lost in '93.
Cool.
That was one of the first big gigs. And then Carcass played the year after that. But we had the fact we're an island that's right at the edge of Europe made it difficult. But we also, I suppose, still had the troubles here.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of put off a lot of bands from probably touring, probably the insurance would have been.
Well, that makes sense. Yeah, duh. Yeah, I didn't even think of that. Yeah. You're right. Yep.
So, if you want to go see a band like My Dying Bride or something, I had friends who had to get the ferry over to England and get a bus and travel for ages. In school, I studied Spanish, so I went to live in Spain for a while. So I actually got to see more bands in Spain than I would staying in Ireland.
Huh, okay.
So I lived there for a while in the 90s and got to see quite a lot of different types of bands who would tour around there. It was north of Spain and Bilbao. But really, I would say here, after the Good Friday peace deal in 1998, it did start to open up the country to more touring bands. So now you get them playing Belfast, Dublin, maybe Limerick or Cork. So we do get to see quite a few. And I had some friends in the Irish scene down south who would have brought over the likes of Skyforger and Up Test and Nagura Bunjet, quite small pagan bands. And they would play in a bar to about 30 people. But they were absolutely over the moon that there was people on the other side of Europe wanted to hear their music.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, the big question is, how have you been into this so long and very active member of our community as well as Gas Mask and Hand Grenades, all that stuff, and you don't have your own channel? What's up with this? You've been pestered, I think, a little bit.
Yeah, it's eased off. I would love to. I suppose in lockdown, that was when I started my Instagram page, and that was a compromise with my daughter. She's a teenager, and she wanted me to start a YouTube channel because I was watching you guys during lockdown.
Mm-hmm.
With the old Friday night streams where they went on to all hours, and I don't know if there was a structure to them, but it was good fun to watch.
It was on Friday, and alcohol was involved. That was the structure, basically.
The structure was, see if you run out of beer or just pass out live on camera or not.
None of us were working, so we put in our 8 hours of alcoholism online. So that's how that went. Yeah.
Well, COVID was a good way to go back and get back in touch with a lot of the stuff in my collection.
Yeah.
I moved around a few times, and unfortunately, this house, the room I do have, is quite small, so I did have to box up quite a lot of stuff. So I started opening them up, and then I'm thinking, some people might be interested in this, and I didn't realize Instagram actually had quite a wide and active music community, metal community as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I started posting stuff, and then I was trying to log them on Discogs, and I was like, oh, hold on a second. Some of this stuff's actually quite rare and
expensive
for ages.
Yeah.
So and sometimes it's like it's not even on Discogs, so you have to list it, and then it becomes a bit of a pain. So I thought I was busy enough doing that there rather than starting up my own channel.
Well, we'll work on them, folks. We'll get them going. We'll figure something out here. But yeah, I guess the next big question would be, people know you, especially in the community here, know you for your extensive knowledge of black metal, both from the 90s and now. You've kept pretty well in control of it, your eye on it. Why did you pick Death Doom for the topic tonight?
So when you reached out to me to come on the show, I suppose a couple of things came to mind. The first one was pagan black metal. Mm-hmm. But I recall, I think there was an episode with Jimmy, and he kind of touched on that subject.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then I thought, well, do you know what? The Discord community and yourself keep mentioning about myself and Tyler maybe doing a black metal show. And
there's talks of that, yes.
There's talks. And I thought, well, maybe save whatever I have for that. And I thought, what other thing that I really enjoy, what other type of metal do I really enjoy? And it was Death Doom. And I used to post quite a lot of that on my Instagram. And it was probably, in my history and my sequence of getting into metal, it was a prior love than black metal. And something I kept in touch with throughout the 90s. Still try to today, maybe not as much. So, unsurprisingly, most of the stuff I picked tonight, if not all of it, is from the 90s.
Right on. Alan, how about you? What is your trajectory getting into this stuff?
It's a good question. I don't think there was really ever like a particular album or a particular moment where it's just like, oh, aha, here's this new and different thing, and I'm going to start down that rabbit hole. Seems like it's one that just kind of crept up on me over time. I mean, obviously the Peaceville stuff, was part of that puzzle, but other bands here and there also kind of fall in that category, and that's something to talk about a bit. Death Doom, I think different people kind of think of it in different ways. We've already mentioned the Peaceville groups a few times, and that's part of the Death Doom equation. But there are bands that fall under that umbrella that have a very different sound than any of those big three acts did. And there are other bands that maybe are Death Doom, maybe they're funeral doom, maybe they're just death metal played really slowly. So I think this will be part of the conversation tonight that's interesting, is seeing where some of these things fall and where some of them don't fall in relation to Death Doom. In general, it's a style I like very much, but again, there's variation in it. So, but I tend to like Doom. With death metal, I tend to like bands that do stick to slower tempos. So Death Doom definitely has a strong appeal to me, even though when you stop and think about it, it starts to be a little hard to, figure out what really defines it compared to the things on either side of it. So what's your take with it, Marty?
It's a little fuzzy on what was the epicenter, but it was probably getting going, and I was super late to tape trading. You know, being up here in northern Michigan, I felt very disconnected from the zine scene. I felt disconnected from any scene. I was just up here. And then, you know, Metal Maniacs kind of entered my world. I mean, you mentioned them earlier, and it just blows me away the reach that Metal Maniacs had. It was all over the place. I mean, from a little convenience store just up the road from my house, I would get it was there with a few other music rags next to a very vast porno section in this liquor store right up the road. Seriously. And it just from there I discovered zines, started writing to zines and buying zines, and then tape trading. I was very late to it. I had like 3 or 4 tape traders, and the first Paradise Lost was recorded for me, and the mini CD of My Dying Bride, and they blew me away. I mean, I was already kind of in the death metal, getting into that stuff, and hearing that really blew me away. And it kind of, that whole Peaceville 3 moment in time is kind of shaped the type of death doom I like moving forward. I tend to gravitate towards bands that are a little bit more, they don't just stick to doom. There's like maybe, you know, occasional blast beat here or there, or, you know, other sort of cultural type instrumentation, or they kind of reach out to different styles within the music. And ultimately, I used to listen to it quite a bit, but the older I've gotten, I mean, lately, the last 2 weeks, all I can be bothered with is Kiss lately. It seems like, I don't know what the ever since my birthday, it's just been a regression of sorts. But
you just want to rock and roll all night, and
I just want
party every day.
Be in better times, I guess. I don't know. But it's a style of music I still very much, I prefer death doom over traditional doom. And I think now would be a good time, Alan, for you maybe we were discussing backstage a bit, the differences. You know, death doom is kind of its own lane, but there's also, the lines can get a bit blurry here and there.
Yeah, for sure. And I don't know, I don't feel like it's a genre.
Thanks, George. Appreciate you, man.
George, thank you very much.
Hope you're surviving the heat.
Happy 4th of July. Yeah, you know, one thing in, you know, kind of reading up on it a little bit, looking around at some different opinions this week, I didn't see a ton of things that I feel you could hang your hat on, other than death metal, even when played slow, maybe retains, you know, certain riffing patterns, time signatures, that it's not changing style, it's only changing tempo. Everything else about it just will still feel like death metal. Whereas people were making the argument that with death doom, yeah, and again, it depends on which style of death doom you're talking about. But in general, it's not just slowing down, but sometimes it is going more towards something like, you know, gothic influences. And you'd hear that like on the My Dying Bride stuff you mentioned, Marty. But other times it's just going for a more stripped down and kind of raw sound. That it's basically losing the technicality that death metal tends to lean into a little bit. You know, not all death metal has to be technical death metal, but a lot of it does require, you know, pretty decent chops as a musician. Death doom doesn't. You know, even when you just go into those more primitive type of death doom bands, they are just maybe sticking to more 4/4 time signature, pretty simple, repetitive but heavy patterns. And the subject matter can start to lean a little bit more towards not just, you know, the depressive and the macabre. They're not going into necessarily full-on gore stuff, but you are getting, you know, playing up the darker side of things. Not necessarily satanic, but, you know, more of the dark depressive, which death metal can do, but maybe it's less likely for death metal to go that way. Again, it feels like there's a little very gray area in between death metal and death doom. Peter, what would you say? Is there anything you think of that kind of distinguishes death doom from just a death metal band who just happens to play at a slower pace?
Yeah, I think just at its simplest terms, it is really just the pacing of the riffs. And what I've, from especially going through my selection today, is I think it's hit home how wider spectrum and how wide a range the style can be. Mm-hmm. Because you can have those bands who are just slower death metal. A lot of them influenced by the likes of Incantation. And they're probably just no frills, just heavy music, heavy death metal, but just quite slow, to the likes of those influenced by the Peaceful Three, who start to bring in that gothic side. But also, I've got a few selections here where some bands and some particular scenes start to bring in more influences like prog or folk, and those, like was mentioned earlier, like they're sort of maybe native instruments to sort of take the style to a sort of different place, where it's in some styles it's almost borderline gothic metal, which I think it helped to push through and make popular in the later mid-90s. Definitely when then the death metal element started to lessen. So yeah, it's always one of those hard to define in a scene. In the chat, someone mentioned, what's the difference between doom death and death doom? When I was younger, I always called it doom death. That's what I seen in magazines. So it was a doomy type of death metal. And I did see someone try to explain it once online, what the difference was. But the older I've got, to me, they're just interchangeable.
Yeah.
I think there really is a difference. I think you maybe just splitting hairs on how much death metal an album may have or a band may play versus how much doom is in there. Is it a 50-50 split or whatever, you know?
Yep.
To me, it's just interchangeable now. I'm just probably too old to try and get too bogged down in those particular type of definitions.
Yeah, agreed. I kind of did the same thing. I used to think, well, maybe if the band definitely is like 75% one, 25% the other, you rearrange the words, but yeah, I don't think it matters that much. And it seems like in recent years, more people say death doom than doom death. I don't have a strong preference, but yeah, death doom just seems to be a little more popular phrase for it at this point, which I'm fine with.
Yeah, death doom to me is just one common denominator is the death metal styled vocals. I think doom death is going to start venturing into other vocal styles a little bit more liberally. But yeah, it's just, there's so much, you know, like Peter said, the gothic wave kind of swept through, and I was trying to do some research before this to try to get my, you know, you sit there, you'll stare at your CD collection and you're like, oh my God, I'm suddenly don't know anything. So you start looking up, and some of the crap that they put on there, I'm like, that's death doom? Okay, well, I'll pull it and listen to it. I'm like, I don't know if this is. I ended up putting it back. But again, the whole trying to classify things, you know, it's a discussion. It's something people argue about. We've seen it here on the brackets. We've seen it on just about anything here. But, you know, it's just a way to communicate to people. But things can get so nerdy and down to the details. It's like,
yeah,
the gothic elements, does that mean it's death doom anymore? Or is it, you know, oh, this one's a little bit more stoner, sludgy sounding?
Yeah,
It's so hard. I mean, if everything just fit neatly into the box that it was supposed to go in, that would be pretty boring. So it's good to have a little variety. And, you know, as we discussed backstage, a lot of the crap I pulled tonight might not make this classification of death doom. So it might be a short night. I might be, I don't know, holding your coat while you go in the pit tonight, Alan.
No, but no, I think that's, you know, with several things we probably all picked, you know, there can be a discussion like, okay, where does this sit? Is it right in, is this kind of, you know, core death doom, or is this one way over on the gothic side of it? You know, there are some bands in recent years, I think, that have kind of gotten much more, they're not necessarily gothic, but have leaned more melodic death doom. And then there are also bands that really stick to that, just, you know, really kind of raw, simple Neanderthal kind of flavor of death doom. But we haven't even really mentioned funereal yet, but there's a border somewhere there where you leave death doom territory and cross into funeral doom territory. So I think it'll be interesting, to see what albums we've picked. But and consensus maybe on some of them that maybe this one really is just slow death metal. I have some that I have a feeling people will be, no, that's just slow death metal, and if so, interesting. I look forward to seeing what folks say about some things.
Yeah, it'd be good to, you know, get some clarification from the chat tonight too, what they think on some of these polls. Like I said, don't really think about it until we're tasked to do so, and it's like, oh, well, I don't know where the fuck I stand on this, or
yeah. And sometimes, like you said, some people, sometimes we all nerd out or run these things into the ground too much. But these kind of conversations can be useful too, because it makes you really think about what are the properties of this thing. I like this album, but why do I like it? What makes it unique? Where does it really fall in the context of other things? It can be a useful sort of focusing device to have those conversations. It doesn't just have to be about, I want to put it in this box and you want to put it in that box. It's like, well, why do we each feel that way? And we come away, with a better understanding of the albums that we're interested in, no matter what we end up, categorizing them as at the end of the night. So yeah. I think the conversations are useful, as long as everybody, stays out of the, name calling kind of thing, which Heavy Metallurgy is pretty good at doing. We have a good live chat and good viewers who aren't really interested in wasting people's time with that kind of stuff. We want to talk about music we know and love and want to know more about, and that's what we're going to do.
And without further ado, why don't Peter, you get us going? Let's do one at a time. We'll go in a circle in a rotation until we get to the end of our stack.
Okay. So I suppose the very first, Death Doom album I ever heard was Paradise Lost, Shades of God, particularly the song As I Die. But I've decided to go with my first pick, which I think was the album that really pushed me to explore the style even more, and that's My Dying Brides Turned Us to Swans.
Nice.
So it's my original cassette I bought back in '93. So, and I didn't realize until I got the CD version a few years afterwards that the CD, the cassette, and the LP all had different covers for the album.
Yeah, I've seen different colors of that, but I never kind of lined them up. That's neat. So
it just the opening version of Sear Me, which I hadn't actually at that point heard the original from the debut as a Flower Withers. But songs like Your River and The Crown of Sympathy with the violins and just the mournful, clean singing was something I wasn't expecting from what I thought was a death metal band, from seeing them in magazines like Terrorizer and reading about them. And I think it was just like, I just wanted more, basically more of that their type of style, that somber, that sort of sorrowful sort of, I don't know, it must have spoke to me on some level, but it was so well done, so interesting to hear that, going from the likes of Swedish and US death metal to hearing that and mixing in the slower riffs of the Doom style, sort of tempos that were, Doom was something I was only barely getting into at that point, so it was quite interesting. So I thought I'd start off with that. That kicked off the obsession really to go and dig further.
Okay.
All
no,
right.
That's a classic for sure. I mean, people always make a big deal about the violin, and it may seem kind of trite, at this stage, but that was a huge deal back then for a band that heavy and deep and growly. To use something like that was really unheard of and made them, really stand out.
All right, Alan.
Okay. I want to start at the other end of the spectrum with a more recent band that I think has done a lot to really elevate Death Doom in terms of visibility over the past decade, or probably 2 decades at this point. And that band is Hooded Menace. And I picked their first one, Fulfill the Curse, to represent that. This is one of the bands, reading up again on some history of Death Doom, trying to pin down when bands were doing things. I think what we'll see a lot of is, the 90s is a really interesting period. Very nice. Yep. Never Crossed the Dead. Great album title, that.
Yeah. Cool album cover, too.
Very cool. Yep. Needs to be reprinted because it's gotten a little pricey. But yeah, something that a couple of articles noted was that Hooded Menace, coming out there kind of late aughts, I think, was one of the first bands, or at least one of the first bands to start to gain traction that really just came out of the gate and said, we are Death Doom. Not that we're gothic doom or gothic death or all these other different combinations we've been talking about. Hooded Menace was one of the first, like, this is what we are. We're not just a slow death metal band, and we're not doing gothic-y things. We want to do death doom. That is the sound we are going to codify here. And it's obviously worked out quite well for them. They've had a good following. They've released, 6, 7 albums at this point. And
one Duran Duran cover.
one Duran Duran cover. Well, yeah, and that's one of the things that's been interesting about Hooded Menace. Now, I don't know their catalog inside and out. Some of them I've got. There's a couple I haven't picked up. One thing I've noticed, though, is Hooded Menace is one of these bands that has started to move away from this early sound where they have that really, again, almost Neanderthal. This album, there's lots of like horror movie sampling and stuff, almost to the point where you could call it cheesy. I think it works well, but they're not above just having the sound samples and the woman screaming in the background and just things like that. But on the more recent albums, especially the past 2, a lot of that stuff is faded out, and there is a little bit of a lean towards more gothic influences. The sound has gotten cleaned up a lot for Hooded Menace. They're covering Duran Duran, as Marty pointed out. So, Hooded Menace, I think, did a lot to sort of say, here's Death Doom, here's what it is, and look to us. We're going to carry that torch forward. Even they've gradually changed their sound from album to album to album. Personally, I like their earlier stuff better. I think they really excel when they are in this kind of horror, swampy, dark, murky kind of themed death doom. The past 2 albums I haven't been nuts about. It's not like they're terrible, but I don't enjoy their cleaner approach to death doom as much as I enjoy their early dark hooded cult figure skeleton. I mean, this is the Hooded Menace I want to hear, not the ones with kind of the airbrushed covers of a big floating bell and stuff. But yeah, I figured I'd start with them just because they have kind of become the face of the younger wave of death doom bands. So it seemed like a good one to bring up early in the conversation tonight.
All right. Well, I'm going to piggyback on Peter's pick here because there's no understating how important this band was. This is the mini CD, Symphonaire Infernus. Great. And of course, As the Flower Withers. And then I was so smitten with this band, I paid the $25 import fees to get I Am the Bloody Earth, which maybe a lot of you maybe have never seen this, and also The Thrash of Naked Limbs. I just could not get enough of that. So yeah, people wonder why I'm so upset in the direction change for My Dying Bride. It's because they owned this lane. They owned it. They were their own sound. They had the voice. His voice was so tortured and diseased sounding. He just sounded sick as hell. Great sick vocals. And then they throw that sorrowful violin over already melancholy laced progressions. It just was a perfect combination. Granted, a band like that, they're going to evolve. They're going to try different things. And again, the gothicism started to infect the scene, and Paradise Lost and My Dying Bride fell victim to it, but to their credit, it was a rise forward. They became more popular for doing that, and more commercial success means a wealth of new material. So yeah, over the years I have my displeasure has diminished greatly, especially like Paradise Lost, because they really leaned into a poppy sensibility that worked really well for them. You want to turn up your nose as an extreme underground metal guy and say, ew, this is stupid. Well, it's not. It's so you listen to an album 3 times and you can't stop listening to the album after that because those hooks have, they're an earworm that just keeps gnawing away at your brainstem. You got to, feed the beast by listening to the album. So I see why it happened, but, Angel in the Dark River will always be, I don't know if I'll ever put that on and be like, okay, I'm okay with it now. that's always going to be. I don't think his clean voice is as good as his death metal voice, and that was a huge departure. I think, and it was a loss of something very special. But as a singer, when you're young, you can do those kind of vocals all day long. Smoke, drink, do whatever. It's always there. But there comes a time, especially if you're a touring band, that becomes a problem. So I get it. But I just wanted to piggyback on the My Dying Bride thing because I think they're very important, not only in England or the whole United Kingdom, but in this style of music in general. Peter.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think quite a lot of the stuff I picked tonight, I can trace some kind of influence from My Dying Bride back to it.
Sure.
And they're probably one of those bands I have the most items of in their discography.
Mm-hmm.
I think of over 30.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I buy everything from EPs, all the albums. And when I was at the Fortress Festival in England last month, I actually bumped into Calvin Robertshaw, who I'm a big fan of. He was one of the original guitarist.
Mm-hmm.
And he left at the end of the 90s, and then he came back for a few years there, back in the mid-teens. I think he was on Feel the Misery, that album. But he has his own project now called Many Suffer. He released an EP independently a couple of years ago. So it's more like black doom. And when I was chatting to him at Fortress, he was saying he's working on a second release, so it should be out soon. So it's well worth checking out if you like that style. So
you followed stuff like the Gotham band as well. I've heard the first I've heard is their latest album, and it's good. I enjoy it.
Yeah. Right.
Well, just like Alan, I'm going to go to Finland for my next pick. It's a band I know you like, Marty. And I would say I usually can't really split their first two releases, which is my favorite. But for tonight's, I've gone with their debut. It was the first one I heard, and it's Unholies from the Shadow.
Hold on a second. I have all of their albums here. Hold on. Oh, go ahead. Keep talking. I'll find them.
Yeah. So what drew me in with this one was obviously the cover of some kind of Polynesian sort of statue or something holding a fish or some kind of sea creature. For me, it's probably one of I would hold up high and probably one of the greatest Death Doom albums in the scene. Palzo's vocals just sound completely demented at times. And I think when you see the band photo, you can see that they're not a normal type of band.
The Finns were always a little off center.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you see that picture, you're thinking these guys are potentially a black metal band.
Yep.
But yeah, it's just I don't know. They have the riffs kind of hold attention throughout for me. It's just one of those ones that it keeps you hanging on, and it is just different. And I don't think Second Ring of Power is a great album, but I don't think they ever repeated that style.
Oop, hold on. Second Ring of Power. Go ahead, keep talking. I'll be your Vanna White.
I think that was what I like about that album is that they didn't repeat it, and it doesn't sound. There's nothing really else out in the scene that sounds exactly like Unholy.
I actually really liked their more gothic. The gothic, we talk about the gothic infecting it, or Rapture was the first one. They employed this lady, I think she sang on the Second Ring of Power, and she started to be a more pivotal role in the band as they went forward. This and Grace Fallen. They remained weird, but very, in a true Finnish fashion, very dark and very dreary, and just a breath of fresh air. They're a completely unique band. I didn't mean to step on continue with your...
No.
Go ahead.
I was going to say it's probably was released on Lethal, if you remember that label.
Mm-hmm.
And I think basically one of the prerequisites of signing for that label was you had to be a bit weird.
Mm-hmm.
Because most of the bands on it were.
Weird is good sometimes. Unless it's into the pandemonium, and then it's a bridge too far. All right. Good one. Alan.
You can't get too weird.
Yeah.
Let's see. Okay, now I'll jump back to kind of the earlier thing. Logan was just asking, like, what is the earliest Death Doom album? Is it the first Paradise Lost album? I don't know. And that's something else I noticed trying to research this topic some. Death Doom's origins are a little harder to pin down. It doesn't seem like there's necessarily one album that everyone points to as like, right there it is. Some genres you can do that really fast with, death metal, power metal. A lot of times you narrow down the list of suspects really quickly, but I didn't see that happening with Death Doom. One album I did see mentioned quite a bit as a formative one is this, an old personal favorite, Winter's Into Darkness from 1990. So this puts it at least, contemporary with the early Peaceville stuff. Didn't get any attention at all at the time. The Peaceville bands kind of, caught people's imagination. Winter dwelled on the $5 sale page in the Relapse catalog for most of the 1990s. They couldn't give copies of this thing away. And now, of course, it's considered, this amazing classic. There are other sounds and influences mixed into Winter as well. They draw on other influences, but they definitely have, that very slow, dark kind of atmosphere developed. But yeah, there's almost a psychedelic flavor in it to a point.
Crust punk.
I was about to say, Eric, is from High Definition TV has pointed out, that there's a strong crust punk kind of influence. It just slowed way down here. So Winter, had an original sound. People may or may not consider this like pivotal, essential Death Doom, but it's one that had a big influence on Death Doom moving forward. Not the gothic leaning branch of Death Doom, the more murky, depressive, sludgy almost side of Death Doom. Great album. I've always loved it. Always thought it was a shame that the band didn't catch on and stick around. Members have gone on and done other projects, some of which are kind of similar to Winter. So there's some other stuff you can follow up on if you really want just more material that's close to Into Darkness and the EP Eternal Frost. So yeah, this one, I don't know that you would call it the first Death Doom album. You'd have to check the exact dates for things like, Paradise Lost and a couple of others. But this seems to be, one of those early ones that helped set the table for everything that would come after it. Winter Into Darkness, part of the early equation of figuring out Death Doom.
All right. Well, let's go on down to Australia. Just Disembowelment with Transcendence to the Peripheral. This is one that you could start to maybe get a little nitpicky on, but I think this is at its heart a Death Doom album. But the fact that they do have a blast beat on here and some world music influences, which would be something that would become more of a fascination for members of this band who would splinter off and do a side project called Trial of the Bow, which was basically leaned into that world music type of an experimental dark ambient type stuff. Mm-hmm. But for a glimpse here, we had this and then the 3-song Dusk EP before they disbanded. But this album is one that's going to eventually make it to the album club. I just always keep forgetting to pull it. But it's a special record. There's a lot of different emotion on here, but it's all dreary and downtrodden. You need a little patience on here, and you need to be... this is the box set thing, or the collection.
It's got the album, but the extra stuff on it as well.
It's
showed up in the local used bin of weird.
Worth that all day long. $12, hell yeah, perfect.
I was like, that can come home with me, sure.
Yep. But they're one of those bands that they pull from so many different influences. I think it's exciting and innovative. These guys were definitely moving the ball down the field effectively. They were doing things to broaden what could otherwise be known as a kind of a closed-minded and isolated style of music, but they really did a lot of things to try to open it up a bit, free your mind type of thing. So I always see Transcendence to the Peripheral as a very special monument to, I would have been really interested to hear where this band went after this. What would it have been way too much of the world music? I don't know, but the core of this is really cool and really crushing. So if you've never heard Disembowelment, do yourself a favor and check out Transcendence into the Peripheral.
Yeah, I agree, Marty. I would put it in the Death Doom category, but it does have a lot of unique influences, so I can see where some folks might be like, huh. It might give people pause about what to call that when it's so unique.
Oh,
yeah,
right.
I would have no qualms putting in Death Doom.
Yep.
And like I said earlier, there is a big, wide spectrum of, as long as it's got that essence of Death Doom and it's got the bit of grind and all the different other aspects to it. Well, I lifted this out of my stack, but it was more probably to have at hand. But if you're talking about the earliest Death Doom album, the earliest one I probably have in my collection, and it's been mentioned in the chat, the Sempiternal Death Reigns, the Spooky Gloom. So it came out in 1989.
Well, that's pretty early for sure. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and it's a. I don't think they even know what they want to be, because at times it can be a wee bit thrashy. It mixes up the pace. It is, some of the songs are quite fast, but then it does sort of slot into that Death Doom sort of vein. But the one I was going to talk about was, which came a year after, was his Delirium and Sue album. So the title is at the back there, Sue, top. So they actually they're from the Netherlands as well. So the Netherlands is probably one of the most fertile Death Doom scenes in the 90s. And these guys take a lot of influence from that Hellhammer Celtic Frost and start to just slow it down even further. It is quite a unique album as well. And I don't think it was independently, or it wasn't independently released, but it was on a really obscure label. So it didn't really get as much traction as some of the other Netherlands sort of Death Doom I'm going to show soon, one album in particular. But I think it's a key one in the evolution of the style.
All right. Killer.
Yeah.
I have not heard either of those albums. They're on the list. On the list.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with them either, but I'm pulling it up right now, so I will remember to check it out later this weekend. Sounds very interesting.
I could do a list at the end or whatever of some of this stuff. Sure.
All right. Alan.
All right. Let's go with the classic. I think Ty already mentioned this one in the chat, and deservedly so. Well, let's see. Actually, he mentioned a different album. He mentioned Dance of December Souls. I happened to pull Brave Murder today, but yeah, you could have pulled either one.
My pile's getting smaller and smaller.
Sorry, Marty.
That's all right.
Yeah, early Catatonia, these first couple of albums in particular really are, for me, quintessential Death Doom. But both of these do lean a little bit, towards the, there's some, gothic sounds. There's some more melodic sounds worked in here. They were, at the time, pretty unique. They didn't sound exactly like the Peaceful bands. They weren't doing the classical flourishes with the violin and stuff that My Dying Bride did. They did their own version of it, and it worked extremely well. Yeah, both Dance of December Souls and Brave Murder Day come to define a lot of what the genre would do moving forward. But again, maybe a little bit more in that more melodic dimension. Maybe that's where, Hooded Menace, I mentioned them as my first pick, and they've drifted more melodic, and maybe it's that they've drifted a little bit more towards this sound. Hadn't really thought of that before, so maybe making this up as I go. But nevertheless, folks know this album well. We don't have to dwell on it a lot. They of course had Mike come in to do vocals and help them out in that department. Since the vocals on Dance of December Souls took their toll, so to speak. Yeah, and after this, Catatonia changed their sound rapidly again. I think I don't know. What do y'all? Would y'all make a case for Discouraged Ones as Death Doom, or is that too clean? Because it is missing the heavy vocals, which seems to be a pretty key element for a lot of bands. Does Discouraged Ones already have Catatonia moving out of Death Doom territory, or did they manage to stay in there for a little bit? What do y'all think?
Go ahead, Peter.
I would say it's minimal. I'd say definitely Dance of December Souls is, and even moving into Brave Murder Day, you're starting to move slightly away from that, because later on, then I have a pick that you guys might have, but there is a connection. Catatonia released an album around the late 90s that I think they try to steer their Death Doom sort of needs down that way, and with Catatonia they want to move further away from that scene.
Okay.
Yeah,
Marty?
I wouldn't say Discouraged Ones is that once you lose those death vocals, I think you kind of you shed the death classification. And there's even, I would even say this in the demo before this, there's a black metal. This is almost like Black Doom to me. There's like this creepy, evil atmosphere to this stuff. It's still doomy for sure, but the vocals are more, traditional, maybe black metal influenced. But this is, I would have loved one more album in this vein. I love this. This and the demo are fantastic. But Brave Murder Day, all day, awesome. Love it.
Yeah. Good stuff, yeah. And I think I would agree with you all. I think, I like Discouraged Ones a lot. I didn't pull it tonight, and I don't think I would put it in this category. I think they have definitely stepped into something else by that point.
It's a great in its own right. You talk about miserable and downtrodden. That shit is dreary.
It has some of the right elements in that regard, but I think they have cleaned up their sound too much by then.
Yeah.
All right, Morty, your turn. Sorry I took your Catatonia pick.
No, that's okay. We're going to be doing this. It's the way it is. This one might get a little talk back, but we're going to stick with the Netherlands, and I'm going to pick what I think is the doomiest of the Asphyx catalog, and that would be the self-titled.
Oh, okay.
This
is a band I was curious to see where people would fall. Is Asphyx, Death Doom, or just really slow death metal?
When you listen to the album, my favorite Asphyx album is The Rack. That thing is just absolutely devastatingly heavy. That is just one of the... I think it's Death Doomy, but I don't think it's straight up Death Doom. This year, you start to lean a little bit more into the Death Doom, I think. You've got a vocalist, what was his name? Ron Van Pol on vocals. A little bit different than Theo Lumens, a little bit different than Martin Van Drunen. Revisiting this album today, I have not listened to this album in a long time, a very long time. It kind of fell between the cracks of their awesome early material. I mean, I got this when it came out, but I was a little disappointed. I wanted more of The Rack. I wanted more of Last One on Earth. I wanted more of that spirit. But this year, there is some double bass on here. It does get a little quicker at times, but for the most part, it is very slow and drawn out and very doomy. And the Netherlands, like Peter said, it was a thing in that realm, in that location. So, yep, the self-titled Asphyx album. Check it out. Really good. Heavy, doomy.
Yep. Peter, what's your take on Asphyx? Which do they fall on the death metal side of the fence or the Death Doom side of the fence?
I can see Death Doom in their sound. I can hear it. I do think. I would say I was going to pick them tonight. I had the Rack out, but I'd say I sort of just tend to fall on the doomier type of death metal rather than Death Doom. But I can see that it's splitting hairs, really. I can see both sides of the argument, but probably see a lot of my picks either fall in really dark, heavy stuff, or else very sort of light, gothic, flowery type Death Doom.
Okay.
And I'm speaking of which, my next pick is probably in that they're kind of dark, sort of danky, monstrous sort of sound that's highly influenced by the likes of Incantation, and that's Finland's Ripikulus.
Ah, yep.
Musa Ceremonia, their 1993 demo, and is a later reissue in Svart. But I think this sound here that
they create on this album becomes very influential in the Death Doom scene going forward, and probably more so today than it did maybe during the 90s. And that's probably down to the fact that, the demo was reissued for more people to hear. But this is like almost ubiquitous in the modern scene for me, from what I hear in modern day Death Doom bands.
And that's the album there. That is kind of the album. They did some stuff after that wasn't as impactful, right? Am I right on that?
Yeah, I mean, the split up not that long after. The split up in 95. They have reformed. I don't know. I haven't really checked out whatever they've done since, if anything. So, but
I've got one other thing, but I don't know if it's a demo. I don't know what it is. They're reissues of stuff, so I have no idea. But all right, good pick, Alan.
All right. I was checking. I didn't pull this off the shelf, but United Universe just brought it up in the chat, and it's one worth discussing, especially in terms of early influences on Death Doom, and that is the Dream Death album, Journey into Mystery, which I think is from 87, if I'm remembering right. Again, I didn't pull my copy off the shelf. The reason I didn't pull it off the shelf is I feel like Dream Death is too thrashy in their basis to really call Death Doom. They're doing something kind of unique, and we've talked about it before. They're one of the few bands that from that era that tried to fuse thrash and doom metal, which are two styles that are a little bit opposite, in terms of some aspects. But they do it fairly well. I know Marty's not a huge fan of the Dream Death album. I think it's a pretty cool one. And I did see it listed on different pages and different articles as something influential on the Doom Death style, but it seemed like a lot of people were pulling up short of actually calling it a Death Doom album. And I'm kind of the same way. I don't think there's enough death metal in Dream Death, which is funny because they have death in the name of the band. Mm-hmm. But I don't hear enough of the death metal sound to want to quite push it into the category. I think it's one of those things you would say is like, it's an influential album. Like when Banger TV used to do those heavy metal trees with things, they always had a couple of slots preserved for like the proto albums, the ones that maybe were too early to really fit what became the sound. I think you can make a case that Journey into Mystery is maybe one of the proto Death Doom albums. It had an impact probably on bands like Winter and some Peaceful 3 bands. I just don't hear enough death metal in their sound. Again, the vocal style is much closer to thrash, a growly thrash sound. The riff structure feels like it's more of a thrash-based riffs, just played really, really slowly.
Thanks, Wade.
Yes, Wade. Thank you very much. Glad you're here tonight, Wade. Because I figured this would be a topic you would enjoy for sure. Where would you all say is Dream Death deathy enough and doomy enough, or are they a little out of bounds?
Go ahead, Peter. You're muted. You're muted, Peter.
Yeah, sorry. I agree with that assessment too, Alan. For me, it was always in that kind of thrashy doom rather than a death doom, a precursor. And good album. Like, I do enjoy it, but I didn't pick it tonight for that reason.
Okay.
All right. Yeah, I'm with you. It's not Death Doom to me. It's a little too early, I guess, and the vocals are it's more influence on thrash, and the whole riff salad idea kind of spilled into their form of doom, and it makes it hard to process for me anyway, which we talked about for 2 hours. So go check it out on the Album Club if you want to hear me bitch about that album.
Yeah, you did that one not too long ago.
Yep, not too long ago. Let us go to, let's just keep going into this Peaceful 3 because I have to milk my stack a little bit here. Lost Paradise Lost. This was a pretty early tape trade score for me as well. And then, of course, that cover art. That cover art is so unique and cool. It looks like, something from a sci-fi graphic novel or something more than a Death Doom record. But, yeah, there's just a heaviness and uniqueness to this. It isn't fully realized, I don't think, until Gothic. Gothic is where they start to incorporate the Gothic elements, obviously, hence the name. And it really kind of opened up, I think, a little bit more organically the direction that they were going to go in, to where My Dying Bride, I think, was a bit more of a uncomfortable transition. I think Nick is a better clean singer than Aaron is, and I just think the variety in his voice just worked a lot better in different versions of their sound than Aaron's did with My Dying Bride. Although Aaron did get it figured out and kind of found his place. I never liked the whininess. I think Nick was always just a bit more sad, and he's just a better singer, I think. But Aaron had him beat in the death growls. But this is a good album, a great album, honestly, and there's a little bit of riff salad here as well, but they keep it all pretty sick, and it has a bit of a punk vibe, like a lot of these English bands did. A lot of these guys were punk kids, and then they're getting into Venom Records, and before you know that, they're moving into this death and doom and grind scene that England got very right. So where they may have come up a little short in the thrash department, they nailed it in this department and also in the grind department. So yeah, very influential record for me as well, and awesome. Check it out. Peter.
And as we know, both Nick and Gregor have said, with their host project, that back in the 80s they were going to those goth clubs and stuff, those post-punk stuff that they're really into. So.
And that shit, you could tell that they were into it, and they weren't just skimming the top of it for an influence. They immersed themselves in it, and it was right. It sounded good. It wasn't shitty. It wasn't shitty throwaway metal dudes, coming up with, trying to gleam onto something. They made it their own, which is pretty cool. All right.
Okay. Well, my next pick is, I suppose sometimes Catatonia are known as like the fourth member of the Peaceful Three, aren't they? I've heard that over the years. Mm-hmm. My next pick, I think, is probably closer to being the fourth unofficial member of the Peaceful Three, and they came out. Well, their only one album came out in 1993, so it was right at that time when the scene was starting to kick off. It's a band who had released the previous year an EP, The Funereal Obsession, and that's Decomposed.
I always love that album title, Hope Finally Died. What a great album title.
Yeah. So this is taking that sound of those bands, but removing any of the gothic, any of the violins, any pianos, no female vocals. And it was just focusing on the pure death side of it, the heavy, but with the dimmy tempos and rhythms. And the singer, Harry Armstrong, has some really, really, really deep gutturals. It's a shame because this band released what is a classic of the scene and then disappeared. They just split up. Well, Harry went on to form many different bands over the years, but the rest of the guys more or less left the scene, from what I know. And interestingly, the drummer is a guy called Tim Spear, and he is the son of Roger Ruskin Spear of the band, the Bonzo Dog Doodah Band from the 60s, which was some kind of like novelty sort of jazz band who did children's shows and released a whole host of albums. I think there was about 4 or 5 of them in the 60s and 70s, and they were friends with the likes of the Monty Python guys.
Huh.
So to have his son then went on to get into this scene. The EP before
his dad probably wasn't psyched.
No, he might have supported him because they were a bit wacky. I think they had a few screws loose. Though he didn't bring any of that sound into the band, but this one's just crushingly heavy the whole way through. No frills, but for me, it's one of the important ones from that early era of the scene.
I have never heard that album. I always saw it in the Relapse catalog. I'm like, I got to pick that up. That title's awesome, but I never, ever did.
it's really nondescript cover. It's like kind of
Yeah.
light pink, but it's off a couple of gravestones. They did a re-release, and it's off some kind of office or repository or something with lots of different little drawers, which is even more nondescript.
Weird, yeah. All right, Alan.
All right, I want to pick one more early, maybe proto-influential one on the scene, but I don't know if we would call it Death Doom. I've never quite know where to put this band's stuff because they influenced a lot of things to come. We were talking about them before we got started tonight. Celtic Frost Morbid Tales got cited on a lot of articles and pages talking about Death Doom as helping define the sound. And they definitely have, the vocal style is heavier than something like Dream Death. But I still don't know. There's that slowness here, but I don't know if it's in a doomy enough sense consistently. Some songs, yes, but Celtic Frost didn't stick to slower tempos necessarily. And I don't know. And this, like with Dream Death, I didn't know if there was enough death to fit. With Celtic Frost, I don't know if there's enough doom to fit. So where do we think this? Is this just like another early, very influential album that a lot of the bands liked that slower, primitive sound that Celtic Frost had, and they incorporated that with even gruffer vocals later on? Does this get an honorary mention in the category? I feel like it would be another one of those on the old banger TV trees. I'd just be like, the influence album, but not part of the actual genre, per se. What do y'all think for early? And you could say probably the same thing for To Megatherion, just this era of Celtic Frost from like 84, 85.
I definitely think you could draw some kind of lineage to it. Definitely with if you check out that Delirium album, like I said earlier, you will hear a lot of Celtic Frost and the Hellhammer influence in that sound, but then just trying to slow it down even further. So I think it's a good shout, actually.
Okay. Marty, what did you think on this one?
Well, getting into this stuff around the era that it was happening, that album I wanted so bad to just classify as thrash, because that's kind of what I was into. But it never felt comfortable in the thrash realm, in the thrash bracket. I don't know that like Peter said, I think you could draw a line of influence. They're somewhere in the family tree of Death Doom, but I think it's a little bit easier to want to put Celtic Frost into a death metal box. Not just straight up death metal, but the grooviness of it. You get songs like Jeweled Throne and Nocturnal Fear, just more up-tempo, double bass, rolling type tracks. Yeah, they do have moments of doom for sure. They could have been like the early Incantation. Before there was death metal, they could have been like Incantation, where there's some doomy parts, there's some more up-tempo type stuff. But I mean, am I sitting here saying that Celtic Frost is death metal? I'm not. They were kind of their own. There was a bit of black metal, the Hellhammer connection. That to me, that Hellhammer is early black metal in a lot of ways. It has the feel, the primitive nature of it, the whole thing.
Yeah.
So
it usually gets listed with early black metal.
Celtic Frost got heavier, and I think a lot of that was due to production stuff. But on the same token, their writing got heavier. They just more groovy and powerful. What were we gonna say, Alan?
Oh yeah, I was just gonna point out that, like you were saying a minute ago, with the Celtic Frost is hard to pin down. Yeah, I agree with you. They don't feel right as calling them a thrash band. They feel more correct calling them an early death metal band, but nobody ever brings them up. I mean, let's face it, what was the first death metal album is a discussion that has been run in the ground, but it's always Possessed versus Death, and you get the occasional token votes for like Necrophagia. Nobody ever mentions Celtic Frost, and Frost would predate that stuff, with this stuff coming out in 84. But it's not really ever part of the Morbid Tales isn't ever in the conversation of first death metal albums. So people in general don't seem to identify them as death metal. or thrash metal or anything. And maybe that's part of the really unique charm of Celtic Frost. They don't fit any of those boxes, but by God, they influenced every single one of them.
Yeah,
whether it
they
was
touched every box.
black,
Twice.
death, doom, death, doom, thrash.
Avant-garde.
Everybody took influence from Celtic Frost. We were talking backstage. Them and Venom just checked so many boxes for that just branch off and took them and ran with it in every cardinal direction on the map.
Yeah, it's the same thing with Possessed. I never in a million years, even though they had the phrase death metal, I never thought of them as a death metal band. I never did. There was dark thrash, and I even watched recently-ish an interview with Jeff Becerra from back in the day where he's like, yeah, we're a thrash metal band. We're a thrash metal band. We're a thrash metal band. He said it like 3 times in the interview. And then now he's like, oh, we're the first death metal. Revisionist history,
Yeah.
I don't know.
And that's a debate for a different time. But Frost seems really, really hard to pin down. But I think, I agree with you all. I think they have a definite influence, part of the discussion of Death Doom starting to find its way as its own sound.
Yep.
All right, Marty, I think that means it's your turn.
Well, I'm going to just work right on up the list here of Anathema Serenades.
There you go.
And the Crestfallen EP is on here as well. This is, again, I think this is Death Doom at its core. You got Darren White on vocals, who's a great death growl vocalist. He only lasted for, 2 albums, this and the Pentecost 3, and then the Crestfallen EP. But, this is a band, a lot like Paradise Lost. It was using the Gothic side. They weren't doing the My Dying Bride thing with the violins. They were leaning more towards the Dead Can Dance side of, what do you want to call it? Post-punk mixed with Gothic, mixed with world music. It's starting to find its way in here with, and a little bit of Celtic Frost into the Pandemonium. You got the lady vocals on the one song. I can't remember which one it was. But, but it wasn't bad. It fit really well. It had like a classical antique store type of feel to it. It was, I don't know, just a unique record, and it fit really well. I would have liked more of this before they went on their journey. After Pentecost 3, this is a band that was very liberal in their evolution. They went to places really quickly that it's almost like they were embarrassed of the metal side of them. Every album, it felt like they were casting it aside more and more and more. And then you get to albums like A Fine Day to Exit. It feels like a Beatles record in a lot of ways, which I end up loving that record because it's so fucking catchy. But again, you could tell at the core, the Beatles are influencing Anathema as opposed to, death metal or post-punk or all that other stuff. They shed all of it relatively quickly throughout their career.
Now, that is several albums later, though. Where do you
is.
think Anathema... Because after Pentecost 3, the first thing you've got is the Silent Enigma.
Yeah.
Are we still in Death Doom territory with Silent Enigma?
They're losing me at this point. Judgment, I really started to like them again because the music was really well done. But Silent Enigma and the one with the angel on it, I had a hard time with both of those records.
Yeah. Peter, what do you think? Where does Anathema exit the Death Doom scene?
I think probably, Eternity was the one with the angel on the front, so it followed the Silent Enigma. I think for me, the Silent Enigma still is Death Doom.
I think I would agree with you. I think that one still qualifies.
I haven't listened to that album since it came out, so I need to listen to it again.
Yeah,
It has
Eternity is not.
Yeah, I think Eternity is where the Beatles influence and stuff like that starts to come through, and the Pink Floyd influence that they have
Yes.
Yeah.
starts to come through. And the Silent Enigma, which they originally had Darren. I think Darren did the vocals for it, and then they scrapped it, didn't they?
Oh, I don't know.
I think he checked them out, and then Vincent then stepped forward and took over. But yeah, I would still classify the Silent Enigma as Death Doom.
Okay.
And
Yeah, I think
getting into that gothic-y, regal-y type sort of style. And then I didn't pick it, but Darren then went on to form the Blood Divine.
Oh, that's right. Yep.
With the guys from Cradle of Filth, Ben and Paul Ryan and Paul Allender.
I remember that being okay. I got rid of my
Yeah,
copy of it. I didn't love it. You know, I liked it, but I didn't love it.
yeah. They did 2 albums, but there was no real death doom in it. It was more gothic-y, maybe doom.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, with still decent albums.
Mhm.
But I suppose my next pick, I'm going to Norway for this one. Um, to a band that still going today, but is shrouded in a lot of, how can I put this, misery and ill fortune. Where two of the members who played on this album ended up committing suicide years later,
Mm-hmm.
and that's Funeral Tragedies.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So that was their debut album. They had an EP beforehand called Tristesse. Um, and this one here is where Death Doom starts to get, when you're on about the mournful, somber, painful emotions coming through, it really does shine in this. And no one, I suppose in hindsight, but at the time didn't know, but in hindsight, that what's going to happen to Einar Andre Fredriksson and Christian Luz. They end up killing themselves within years apart in the early 2000s.
That's unfortunate.
Yeah, and Einar, he's, you ever see the cover of Abyssic Hate's album?
Mm-hmm.
I start with all the, self-inflicted wounds, all the scarring from,
Yep.
self-harm. So what makes the album very special for me is the female singer on it, a girl called Toril, who incidentally did do vocals for Old Man Child, Born of the Flickering, just our now album.
That's a great
But
record. I
always
love that
remember
record.
Yeah, great record. I always remember reading, I think it must have been Terrorizer back when it came out and interviewed the band. She said she would get so into the performances that she would be crying during them.
Mm.
So really invested in that whole mournful, except sadness side of Death Doom that it is a bit of a heavy listen, but there's a kind of beauty in it. There's a sereneness sort of into her, but bringing those delicate vocals into the mix, really. That's just, for me, it's a special standout album in the scene.
I've seen that album so many times shown, and I have yet to hear it. In fact,
Oh,
I
really?
better write that one down too. All right. Okay, Alan.
All right, let's see. All right, I've done a couple of sort of early ones. Let's just do a band to me that, is kind of quintessential Death Doom. And it's an American band this time, Morgion, band from California. This is their debut album, Among Majestic Ruin. They made 3 albums, and each one sounds a little bit different, but they all stay within the Death Doom lane. There was a clear evolution of their sound. On this one, the death metal is more prominent, especially in the guitar sound. It still has a little more of that crunchier sound to it for sure. The second album is my favorite. Solinari, I think, is just one of these really cool, dreamy, heavily atmospheric albums that does the Death Doom sound almost perfectly. And the third album, has kind of a quieter, a little bit forlorn and more sedate vibe to it. It's still good, but it was one of those that you could kind of tell, this band maybe seems a little bit at a loose end, and they did break up not too long, I think, after it came out. So it was kind of they may have been running a little low on gas in the tank when they put that one together, although it still is a really cool album. But Morgion does it extremely well, coming from death metal influence early on and gradually losing that across the albums. Now, at least some of the members have been active in other things. The drummer is currently in the epic band Stygian Crown, and they have a little bit of a doomy side to them, as many epic metal bands can. There's often that sort of fatalistic heaviness to some of that stuff. and it comes across there. So it wouldn't be considered Death Doom at all, but it is cool that they still have a little bit of a doomy element, tracing back maybe to some of the Morgian stuff. Morgian, I think, is one of those bands that got overlooked a bit at the time. They were maybe an odd fit to be on Relapse back then, although Relapse had lots of different stuff, so maybe not. But they just didn't get traction for some reason. I actually did get to see them live. They were one of those bands like on the Relapse stage at Milwaukee's Metal Fest in '99. So they only got to play for like 20 minutes, which was a shame. But it was an incredibly cool set. They used like really bright backlighting, but also cranked up, some of the fog machine dry ice effect. So really, even by the time they started, the stage was very bright. It wasn't dark. There was plenty of light, but they had enough, of a haze in the air that you could see just the shadows of the guys. You couldn't really make out features of them on stage. And it just really perfectly captured the atmosphere. It looked a little bit like the cover of this album, where you had these dark silhouetted figures with this kind of bright orangey yellow background behind them. And it was only 20 minutes, but I thought it was 20 of the best minutes of music I saw that entire weekend.
That Relapse stage was a pain in the ass to get into. It was always packed.
It was always packed. It was a very small stage, a very small room. And with the bands only having 20-minute sets, there was a constant churn of, set up, breakdown, get the next one on, people coming in and out. I knew I wanted to see Morgian because I was already a fan of the band at that point. So I don't know who was on before them. It might have been Nile, come to think of it. And so I went in early, stood through the Nile set, which was average, and they did not blow the audience away at that point, because I wanted to be there, and make sure I caught the Morgian set. So yeah, Morgian's an old favorite in this style for me.
All right. Well, if you're just tired of dark, depressing themes and from the secular bands, and like bands like My Dying Bride that share negativity through their music, wouldn't you rather have your child listen to maybe the life and times of Jesus through the album Exhumed of the Earth by Australia's Paramecium? Sure you would. Of course you would.
Good album.
This is a great album. Again, very My Dying Bride inspired. The main guy in this is Jason Sherlock, who was the drummer for Mortification, among a bunch of other bands, one of which is Horde. He was the sole member of Horde, Helig Usvart. Holy unblack metal, which the album rips. It's great, killer record. But here it's, like I said, it's a concept album talking about the life of Jesus. A bunch of biblical quotes throughout here for points of reference along the way. You got the violin mixed in with the heavy death doom. Well-written songs, great melody lines. There's a depressive nature to it. Nothing original, but they latch on to the style, and they do it very well. They own it. This is the only thing I've ever heard by this band. They put out multiple albums. I don't know if they're all as good as this, so maybe they are, maybe they're not. This was hard enough to get a reasonable priced copy of. So
yeah, it tends to be a little pricey.
Yeah,
but it's good.
Oh yeah, very good record. All right, Peter.
Yeah, great record. I was trying to look. I have that in the second one here somewhere in the pile, but well, I'm going to see your religious icon or image anyway, though this would probably be more for the dark side, so I'm going to Brazil for this pick, and this is from 1992. So this is a band who formed in the late 80s, so they have an interesting take on Death Doom because they were contemporaries of Paradise Lost, and even probably the predate My Dying Bride, but they come into the style with a slight hint of black metal, and it's a band called Pentacrustic.
Paradise Sepultura. Sorry.
So it's called The Pain Tears, and it's from 1992.
Huh. Never heard of this one either.
Yeah, this is real. This is a real mix of sort of dank, dark, death, bit of doom. Like I said, a bit of black. There's even a wee hint. It's of grind. It's almost like take Mystifier and add it in with Death Doom. Like I said, this actually has their original demo added on at the end. So yeah, this is really, like I said, dark and evil. So this can compete and go up against your Paramecium any day. The dark side. So yeah, something religious. I just thought I'd grab that since I've seen your pick.
Cool. Alan.
Oh, let's see. We'll go with this one. Another American band. This band, again, maybe we'll make a case that this is just very slow death metal, but I think on their early stuff, it has a really doomed out nature to it. And that is Cyanide.
You bastard. I thought I was safe with Cyanide.
Oh, crud. I thought I was safe showing it that you probably didn't pull it.
Oh, we're good. We're good.
Yeah, I went with Descent into Hell. You could certainly go with the debut, The Dying Truth, as
Death
well.
Doom Destruction is what I pulled because it was big and sticking out of the rack. We all
Yeah,
had that
those,
one.
you know, around that point, you know, there's a point at, you know, somewhere around that album, you know, certainly after that, where they kind of start to lose the doomier element. They're still, you know, crushingly heavy, but they start to feel more like, okay, yes, this is just, you know, a slower death metal band. But I think the early stuff, you know, they do have that death doom mixture down, and have it down really, really well. Very heavy, very brutal, but not just slow death metal. And again, this is maybe leaning towards that early Hooded Menace, you know, drawing influences from this era of Cyanide, you know, making it, you know, yeah, really filthy, knuckle dragging, scary sounding in the best possible way. The later albums aren't bad, but again, I think they just, you know, started to speed up more consistently, and lost some of that atmosphere, replacing it with more of a dose of brutality, as opposed to that, you know, desolation that you hear on these first couple of albums. A lot of the stuff in the Cyanide catalog is a little bit of a pain to get. Some of it's been out of print. It looks like, though, I've been seeing copies of some of the early albums pop up on some distros lately. So if you've been looking for Cyanide and just avoiding it because of price tags, I haven't confirmed that something got repressed or that someone's picked up and licensed it, but it seems like they're showing up for much more reasonable prices in recent months. So this could be a good time to poke around and get those early Cyanide records without having to pay $25, $30, $40, $50 a piece for them like you did for a while there. So yeah, Cyanide, the early Cyanide, definitely a great example for Death Doom in my mind.
All right. I'm up next. I'll get in on this one before everybody else gets it. One of my modern bands here, very popular band, Worm. This is Gloomlord.
Mm-hmm.
This is a band. This is a chameleon band, and I tried. I have this album, and I've got the one after it. You know, these are good.
For Everglade?
Yeah, for an Everglade. No, I don't think it was that one. Maybe it was. I think this is solid, but it's very much a product of its influences, which they've kind of done that again on their new album, which is a symphonic black metal record. But here, they're definitely a handful of disembowelment riffs that play with nostalgia, a person's nostalgia for that style propped up, and they're just not as good as disembowelment. I know it's a lot to ask because disembowelment, like I said, we're a very unique band and pushing the boundaries. This here, it's a very solid death doom album. It just has a lot of riffs I've heard before and solid. I can see why younger people gravitated to this and like, wow, this is great. This is great. Maybe they didn't hear disembowelment. I don't know, but this is solid, but nothing necessarily essential.
Yeah. I think that's a good point, Marty. I think for younger fans, it's a good entryway kind of thing.
100%.
It's of their generation, so they're more likely to see it and hear it and be their first exposure to such a thing. And it is well done. But yes, for folks that have been listening to it for decades, it sounds like, okay, this is a good take on it, but it's nothing we haven't heard previously. Yeah, I like those two Worm albums, but I don't go back to them very often. I will probably pull some of the other stuff we've talked about tonight instead. But hey, everyone's got to start somewhere.
Agreed.
Yeah, if it makes sense. If you're a newer, younger fan, you're probably going to look at what is out currently, not which Australian band made one album in 1993 and then disappeared. Let me start there with my metal journey.
Yeah.
That's not going to happen for a lot of fans, and that's okay.
$20 spins a lot easier to click onto than that.
Exactly. You can start with Worm, and if you really connect with it, that's great. And maybe, eventually down the road, that leads you to Disembowelment, and you figure out, okay, now I know where Worm got some of their sound from, and I like that too.
Yeah, and even the new stuff, it will hopefully get people to check out some 90s black metal.
Yeah, same thing there. Necropalace could be a good gateway for folks to go back and check out other things.
Yeah.
And then realize that, hey, this early Dimmu Borgir shit is really good. Wow. I thought Worm was all unique, but no, there's this whole other band. Anyway.
And Odium, which the cover is an homage.
That first Covenant album.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. This is probably my first pick that gets a wee bit left field. And staying in England, this album came out in 1994. Another band I discovered through Terrorizer. It's a band who blend death metal, doom metal, shoegaze, jangly guitars, post-punk, and they have a certain style that reminds me of the 4AD type bands from that era. And that's Hibernoid, The Last Day Begins.
Huh. Don't know.
So this came out on Displeased Records. So actually, when I posted this on my Instagram page a few years ago, the bassist reached out to me, and he said that they were finally getting around to reissuing it on vinyl. So he said that I want a copy. So I was like, okay. So he sent it to me, and this is the vinyl you seen earlier, Marty. So it was re-released about 2 or 3 years ago. The sculptures on the original were actually designed by one of the band members, and this is a picture of them years later with all the weather beaten and with the leaves and bushes growing over them. So
cool.
I thought that was kind of like a nice link back to the original issue.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's an interesting mix, but it worked for me. It works. It's really, Marty, I know you like Cocktail Twins and bands like that there.
Oh, yeah.
So I think you might enjoy this if you don't know it already.
Writing it down.
Yeah, I am too. That one sounds interesting. I've never heard of them.
Yeah, some of the earlier stuff even mixed in a bit of an industrial.
Dig it. All right. Alan.
All right, let's do another one that where does this fall? Another one that I think I saw some lists that put this as like absolute, death doom essential, and others that were like, that's a slow death metal album. It doesn't quite work. Autopsy, and I saw people pick different albums. Some people would list the debut, which I don't feel that one fits the bill quite as well as Mental Funeral. Mental Funeral is where they start to get really the Black Sabbath side of things comes to the front more frequently.
I pulled it just for a talking point, really.
Which is kind of what I did here then too. Is this death doom or is it slow death metal? Is it where does Autopsy? Is it like Winter where it's a really important influence on the bands who would come, but And if Autopsy does count, is there a point where they stop counting as Death Doom? Is there a point where they do just become a death metal band? A good one, but I don't think they would have stayed Death Doom throughout their career. So, in a way, I want to call this Death Doom. I feel like it's got some similarities. It's got, this, that, low, deep darkness to it. It leans a little bit maybe towards like, the Asphyx side of things where, it can be a little bit simple, almost, slightly, I almost want to say sloppy sounding, not sloppily played, just that, it has that sound of something you would, dredge up out of a swamp or a sewer, which I think a certain, style of Death Doom really plays into that. But I don't know if they do it consistently enough across the album. I mean, it's a album that's got some variation to it. So, Marty, you wanted to talk about it too. So, what do you think? What do we do with Mental Funeral in the Death Doom conversation?
I think it's part of it. It's part of the journey. I mean, obviously they're seen as a death metal band. That's just the way that is. But I mean, you listen to like even Severed Survival. There's just a doomy crawl to it. There's also a stoner vibe to that shit as well. So they're one of those bands that's pulling on multiple influences to arrive at a unique strain of death metal. I think doom is in their DNA for sure. Yeah. Are they a straight up death doom band? Nah, but it's in the mix.
Yeah, I like Falafel's word here. It's a slimy kind of death metal. That's a good description for Autopsy, especially early Autopsy.
And Scott, hey, cheers. We just talked about your band, man. Autopsy is Sabbath riffs all over. They qualify.
Cyanide was, just the last round around.
All three of us pulled Cyanide, so there you go.
Cheers, Scott. Yep. Happy 4th of July, man.
All right. Oh, shit. Well, hold on. I'm a little behind here.
It's all good.
Well, this is one that is maybe a little bit more modern, and this is when Death Doom was getting a little bit more. This is Asunder with Works Will Come Undone. I had to revisit this one a little bit today, and it's just one of those. It's Death Doom at its core, but they're throwing the occasional violin. There's some weird little transitions here. It feels very. I would have to check where these guys are from, but it sounds very Pacific Northwest. I wouldn't be surprised if these guys are from Portland or Seattle or somewhere like that. It just has that organic, earthy kind of doom influence mixed in with it. But threw this on, listened to a couple tracks. It's crushing. It's so heavy and dense. By this point, productions are getting more. There's more trickery going on, and it's just an all-encompassing heaviness, cool, brutal vocals, good mix of dynamics throughout. Again, sounds very Pacific Northwest. Someone will tell me on here, I'm sure, where they're Oakland. There you go. Wasn't even close. So, but yeah, there's definitely that West Coast vibe to it for sure.
What album is that one on?
That was Works Will Be Undone. Good stuff.
Yeah. One to check out for me.
All right.
Okay. Yeah, kind of hinted towards this band earlier. Probably one of I showed those two earlier ones from the Netherlands scene, and this is probably one of the bigger ones that probably had more exposure in the early 90s, sort of to get the scene kicked off, and that's the Gallery's debut, Always.
Oh, yeah. Man, I'm taking a beating here. I have a weird reissue of that, so here you go.
Yeah, so I mean, I think the cover just lures you in. It's so exotic looking. Like
that is way cooler. What the hell were they thinking with this? This is a Pavement reissue.
Oh, is it?
Well, that explains it. Pavement.
Yeah, they didn't want to pay for something apparently.
Right.
Yeah.
Or they just like boobies and they wanted some illustrated boobies on there. Who knows?
A lot of their packaging left things to be desired.
Yeah. Well, this was Foundation 2000. It was like a Dutch label that released quite another kind of eclectic sort of roster. But but yeah, we all know that they never really repeated this. Obviously, they got rid of was Bart the vocalist, and they tried the female vocalist on the next album, and obviously it didn't really click until Mandyland when they got a Nick in. But yeah, was a big influence for me as well, getting into, because they were, again, probably slightly different to the Peaceful Three since they were contemporaries, but very much on the gothic side that we know they end up going in, similar to Anathema sort of trajectory, into that kind of rock, more sort of atmospheric rock sort of style. Yeah, it's one I always like to return to.
It's very cool, but there's no denying that band got way more interesting when they got Annika in the band. Their music became a lot more special, you know. Commercial, but special.
Yeah.
Alan.
All right, I'm going to go with this one next. And here's another band that some folks might say just slow death metal. And I could see a case for that. Japan's Coffins.
Oh, yeah. I would agree with them 100%.
Yeah, I pulled Sinister Oath, which is their most recent one off the shelf.
Cool band.
I really like this album.
One trick pony, but cool band. Yeah.
One trick pony, but damn, they know how to do that trick well. Yeah. The production on this album really puts it over the top. And again, I want to go back to that word falafel used in the live chat earlier. This album sounds so slimy, it sounds wet. It just has that dripping sound. You can hear the moisture building up. The cover art to me too. This to me screams Death Doom. Just the morbid, murky zombie kind of stuff absolutely works. And yeah, Coffin. Their playbook is not very thick, as you said, Marty, but they've done it very, very well. I haven't kept up with them over the years. It's the kind of band I'll check in on rare occasion and like, yep, they're still Coffins and they're still doing it really well.
I've got way more Coffins albums than I probably need, but they're all good.
I don't have a ton. It's one of those bands, though, someday I want to walk into a store, someone's going to have dumped their Coffins collection, they're going to be $8 a piece, and I want to blow like, $60 on Coffin albums that I'm missing. It's going to happen. I'm okay
Same album, different cover.
Kind of, sort
Perfect.
of, and I will walk out of there and I'll be happy. I'm quite okay with that fate. I'm not complaining. But this is one where I can see that people might, again, think of it as that's just slower death metal, because there's somewhere in that asphyxed and mental funeral kind of swirl of influences. They don't have those other elements that Autopsy does. They don't have as much of the Sabbath, and definitely not like the Stonery vibes. But yeah, I think of Coffins being pretty close to Asphyx on the shelf in terms of style. It's good, crushingly heavy, simple, but also in a good catchy way, not in a they don't know what they're doing way. So yeah, if you're gonna call Asphyx slow death metal, and maybe Coffins has to go over there too. If we're okay calling one Doom Death, I almost feel like the other one has to go in the Doom Death bin as well. Regardless,
Coffins for sure.
A fun band. You think Coffins would, but Asphyx maybe not. Okay, see, I would probably keep the two together. That's interesting that you kind of might separate the two a little bit.
All right. Well, going back to Chicago, this is the second full length by November's Doom. This is of sculpture. Oh my God, my fucking eyes are. Of sculptured ivy and stone flowers. I need longer arms to see these words, apparently. Yeah. Again, this is a band that came out, and I like them. Saw them a couple times at various Metal Mom Fests over the years. And solid. Paul Kerr, obviously awesome booming voice. He's gone on to do guest vocals for Witherscape, and he's done a bunch of other stuff. But yeah, these guys were kind of gleaming on to what was going on in England a little bit, maybe a little bit in Europe. But solid songs. The albums always felt a bit long to me, but I always liked them. And live, like I said, Paul's voice was just booming and crushing. And there was a lot of, and the band has gotten, I think, a little bit more refined as they've gone on. They're a band that I just check in on occasion. Don't feel the need to own everything by them. I have a couple albums here and there, and it's really probably all I need, but I think they're definitely worth being in the conversation here.
They could be, yeah. I usually think of them as just a doom band, but
I
see
picked
where
them.
you're coming from.
That's what I picked. I picked the debut and then the EP that followed it. But
Yep.
I would definitely include them in it. But I'm jealous because I've never seen them live. So.
I'm trying to remember if I've seen them live. I might have, but I think I'm getting them confused with someone else, like Ever. I think I saw Evergrey, for some reason I tend to mix those two up. Probably because they're both doomy bands, and neither one ever fully clicked with me.
All right. You're back.
So this one here, I'm just going to show a couple of albums because it's a scene that I discovered through a free cassette that came with Terrorizer. And I'm kind of like looking at the Gatherings cover. It was exotic, but this band actually sounded exotic. And they played all these different type of instruments, which I had a note down because I'm not that familiar with them. And Darbuka drum, an oud, O-U-D, and a quan-un, which is some kind of Middle Eastern stringed instrument. And the song I heard on the compilation tape was called Sahara's Storm, and it's Orphan Land Sahara,
Yeah.
which I think has enough deaf doom in it to justify the inclusion here. They did go on to become more progressive in their sound, and today they're nothing like they used to be. Today, I'm not really sure what they're going for, kind of like modern metal. But back then, this was exciting to hear. Not many bands sounded like this at all, and this got me sort of digging around that scene a bit in the 90s, and there's a couple of albums came out the same year. A band that's older than them from Israel was Salem, with Kaddish.
Oh, yeah.
Or Salem.
I remember back in the day, there was a million mail fly. Every time I get a package, there'd be a Salem mail flyer in there. That and Black Funeral and Internal Bleeding. Those are like the three dominant mail flyers back in the day, before the internet. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, I know the artwork was pretty cool, so
yep.
I remember wanting to check that out. And actually, well, that's our previous EP where the wee hype sticker talks about them being Israel's first black metal band. So it only came out a couple of years prior, so they made a bit of a shift. Maybe they were jumping on the bandwagon, I don't know. And then there's another Israeli album that came out from a band called Substance for God in the same year, 1994. Assembly of Flowers is the name of the album. This took a lot of influence from Paradise Lost.
Gotcha.
But it's an interesting take. So it was a small scene that was going over at the end of the Mediterranean at the time.
Yeah, talk about a small scene. I mean, not a big country. So, yeah. All right, Alan.
All right. This one is definitely not Death Doom, but it's part of the conversation. Should be mentioned. And that is Incantation.
Bastard.
Yeah, I'm thinking, what is Marty picked? And I'm trying to shoot around you, and I'm keep shooting.
No, we're all good. No, it's all good. We'll talk about them either way.
But yes, so Incantation's a death metal band. They are just a death metal band that has a penchant for playing slowly, more often than not, and that's quite okay. I would not call them a death doom band, but I think they have a big influence on the sound as it developed over time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something that's worth keeping in mind with Incantation. We've said it before, but it bears repeating. This was unusual when it came out. Incantation, it was on the scene for a while, but by the time the first couple albums came out, death metal was much more technical. There was more of an emphasis. It was a fast-paced, up-tempo, lots of technicality. And Incantation is not that. They had a very different take on death metal. And it was, I mean, they had a following. I'm not saying they were like, written off or anything. But at that time, a lot of people did look at them as like, what you guys doing with all the Sabbath riffs? Why are you playing so much Sabbath riffs? John said in interviews that, guys in other bands used to rib him nicely, not being jerks about it. But, they would be like, dude, can you fit any more Sabbath riffs in there? Do you really need that many? It was a very different way to approach death metal. And it wasn't necessarily the most popular way for a long time. And it's funny because, especially over the past, 10 to 15 years, Incantation's almost become the poster child for like early and mid 90s death metal. Whereas at the time, I doubt they would even have been considered second tier death metal. They were kind of, by the time the albums are coming out, at least, again, they were around earlier, but you don't get the albums hitting the shelves until death metal's already starting to get kind of bloated. But they were also one of the bands that carried on and kept things moving through those leaner years later in the 90s when everybody was enamored with black metal. And a lot of your death metal bands had just sort of faded, changed styles or whatever. And Incantation, John just kept doing what he does really well, writing death metal that has a fast and aggressive component to it, but then at the drop of a hat can all of a sudden just completely come to a dead stop and crush you, with his Sabbath-inspired side of his personality. So, I think that over time appealed to more and more people. Folks caught on that is actually really cool. It's not just weird or strange. It's weird and strange in a cool way, and other bands adopted it and leaned into that. It's like, well, instead of going back and forth on tempo like Incantation, what if we just played the slow side of Incantation? And that does become Death Doom for sure. So I figured Incantation definitely deserved inclusion in the conversation. Not a Death Doom band, to be clear, but got to be a huge impact on a lot of the bands that are now considered Death Doom. And
that album in particular, I know back in the day, John might not have been happy with the production of that, and initially it could have been seen as a bad or weird production, but I think that production made that album a bit scary, which wasn't something that necessarily came along with death metal, other than a band here or there. But there was something really evil, and it was so obtuse, and it didn't sound like its peers. It sounded completely different.
Yeah, no, scary is kind of a good word for Marty, because by that time, death metal wasn't scary that way anymore. Again, it was still brutal and heavy, but it was moving on up in the world. It was, how technical is your guitarist, and how many polyrhythms can your drummer play? And Incantation's just like, fuck that, evil.
Yep.
And it works.
All right. Let's go this way. We're talking about American Death Doom. Let's talk about Evoken. This is Embrace the Emptiness. This band, I've always really liked this band. They really had, they could have played it safe, but they do some things now and then that are, again, a little bit more expansive. Their later couple albums in particular, they push the boundaries. They do things that not all other bands do. Their use of keyboards, they really bring things down to really sparse places where there isn't a lot going on. There's just a just really dank atmosphere that hangs, and it's depressive. It kind of takes you out of it's world building. It kind of takes you out of the world to another place, and Death Doom really never does that. So I found these guys, even though I don't know if a lot of people really gravitate towards this band because of their uniqueness, but I think they're a special one in the scene. And I like the uniqueness. I like their storytelling capabilities. They lean into some concepts on occasion. And they're heavy as hell, but they can bring it down quiet as well. But they never lose the spirit of death metal I think the death metal spirit is a good foundation for them, but the doom is pretty suffocating when they want it to be.
Yeah. Now, I'm glad you brought up Evoken, Marty. Before we start the next round, I think here we have to ask a question. Are we now crossing over into the funeral doom side of things from Death Doom? Evoken to me feels like a band that's really close to that division, but I don't know where they fall. And I'm interested to hear what both of you think. Because funeral doom, we haven't touched on it at all tonight, that is distinct from Death Doom. And I think if you take certain examples, it's easy to tell the difference. Yeah, exactly.
You got Thurgothan's Stream from the Heavens and Stormcrow Fleet by Skepticism.
Yes.
This is the pure embodiment of the term funeral doom. They got the funeral organ and timpanis. They
Yep.
use timpanis as their main source of rhythm. So this feels like a funeral procession.
Yes.
Procession.
Mournful congregation and esoteric. Yeah, lots of things. These things I think were definitely over on the funeral side of things.
Because that's like my next 3 picks.
Well, I mean, maybe you want to push back on that. But what do we think with Evoken? Is Evoken still on the Death Doom side of things, or are they maybe more? Are they more in the funeral doom zip code?
Peter, what do you think?
Well, I had picked them out, so I do tend to fall on. I can see the argument for funeral doom, but I tend to lump them in with death doom, and again back on that death end of the spectrum, the slow death sort of side of things, rather than funeral doom.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and Marty, I'm assuming you keep them on the Death Doom side since you picked them.
Yeah, I think they're a Death Doom band. They do lean into funeral. They do go slow, and like I say, they strip a lot of layers away and become very sparse. But they always build it back up to a plotting. The vocals are also a good indicator. They keep them usually pretty sick. The riff style, I don't know. It feels like a Death Doom band to me.
Yeah. I think I agree overall, and it might be a case where maybe certain albums are more strongly aligned with one style than the other. There's some of their albums I haven't played in a long time. Their albums tend to be long. They tend to have a lot of long song structures, and they are slow very often. So maybe there are certain phases where they do lean more funereal and some where they lean more Death Doom. I think I would barely just keep them on the Death Doom side like you guys have said. But yeah, there is a point where, like we said, Death Doom is slower than death metal. Funeral Doom, you get even slower than Death Doom. So there is a point where you're moving out of this genre. Okay.
Shit, it's my turn.
No, you just showed Evoken. So it's
right on. All right.
Okay, to balance it up, then I'll head a wee bit more towards the gothic-y side of Death Doom, and moving over from Israel over to Greece, and the debut album from On Thorns I Lay. So this was a Greek band on Holy Records, and Holy Records sometimes would issue out the albums with a coloured jewel case. In this case, it was purple, but the album's called Sounds of Beautiful Experience. So, for full grasp of English, it's a long running band. They're still going today. They have moved more in that gothic direction and abandoned some of the Death Doom. The vocalist back then, Stephanos, he mixes up the growls with sort of gaspy, whispering, clean vocals, and the lyrics are kind of about how he's lovelorn. So there is a really prevailing gothic flavor to this album. The hype sticker even refers to it as voluptuous, atmospheric, voluptuous metal.
Huh.
And on the third track, this is really random. On the third track, they break into like a ska riff.
Oh no.
It only lasts for a few seconds, but it's just strange.
Keep Jason Hook out of doom metal.
Yeah, a wee bit left field in that song, but yeah, this is very on the gothic-y side.
All right, Alan.
Let's see. I'll do one on the Gothic side. I don't think Marty picked this. There's a couple I'm now setting aside because I think he might pick them. We'll see. But
It don't matter. I have more. I have wrote down other things to go grab. The chat has been very helpful. I'm like, oh shit, I didn't think of that. Oh shit, I didn't think of that.
good deal.
Yeah.
Here's another band that rapidly changed styles and left anything Death Doom behind. But I think there was a little phase early in their career where they would qualify, and that is Pyogenesis. And to represent the Death Doom era, which has a little bit of a gothic-y tinge to it, I picked Waves of Erotasia, which is an EP, but a really, really good one, and was part of my introduction to the band. So yeah, here it feels like they're still drawing on the death metal sound. They're still, the guitars, still, are leaning towards, especially maybe the more of that Swedish sound. The vocals still have, the more, guttural, but decipherable. And yeah, they're playing up a little bit of, some gothic, inflections in it. Even by the album after this, Sweet X-Rated Nothings, they're already starting to strip some of that away. There are components that are kept, but the song structures are becoming catchier, more streamlined. It's a fun album. I enjoy it a lot, but already you could tell they were changing. And pretty quickly after that, within another album or two, they weren't really even in metal anymore. And they've gone on, and I think they've had some success in parts of Europe as, I don't know what they're considered. I don't know if they're considered some kind of, all quote unquote alternate pop rock band or what. But I knew following their career trajectory across a few albums in the mid 90s, it was really weird because you did not know what you were going to get. I dated a girl around that time who really liked the band, and she, liked this EP a lot, liked the Sweet X-Rated Nothings album a lot. And I especially for like her birthday, I had to import a copy of one of the albums that came after that, and I'm forgetting which one. And it just sounded so different. She was just like, "Thank you. This is, it was really sweet that you ordered it, but this is this even the same band? It sounded so different, so fast." But yeah, there is a phase early on that they just didn't stick with it very long. But Pyogenesis did a good job with it during the short period that they were in the style.
I had selected the previous EP, self-titled, but
okay, yep.
Sometimes it's known as Ignis Crucio, the last song on it.
Well, very cool. Yep, I've never tracked down a physical one of that.
All right. We're just lucky and happy today that Peter found his. So,
So I just remembered I did dig out a couple of CDs. I don't know where they are. They're probably in that pile in the kitchen.
Right on. All right. Well, let's do something a little closer to home here. Let's talk about Seder. This is Gunungagap. I put this out. I don't know how many years ago, but yeah, this is Austin Lunn from Panopticon's Death Doom band with Wesley Crow and Adam. I can't remember Adam's last name. Crow is also in the band Wheels Within Wheels. They done Gunungagap. They did For Winter Fire and their early release Cortez the Killer, which is a Neil Young cover. But yeah, this is pretty much straight up Death Doom. Really slow, a little bit of a pagan themed band, but it doesn't translate over much. This album in particular is very cosmic in a lot of ways. And I can't remember, the Pale Blue Dot and the Vast Dark. It's a very long, sprawling song with Chet Scott from Blood of the Black Owl has a very long vocal cameo on it. Absolutely great. Very emotional, crushing Death Doom. Austin's voice is a little bit different on this material. He just really takes it low and brutal and guttural, and he does it very well. He's got a booming death voice for sure. He's more of a imposing hollering style in Panopticon, but yeah, man, this is good stuff. They're a great band. Mm-hmm. Don't know if they'll ever do another thing. Probably not. But yeah, what their footprint is largely unheard. A lot of people don't know of this material, but it's really good, really well done. Definitely check them out if you're into just heavy, crushing, well written, pagan sometimes, cosmic other times, Death Doom.
Yeah, I like
Yeah.
the start of it. I'm gonna have to check it out.
It's really good. For some reason or other, I discovered them long before I heard anything from Panopticon. I actually don't know why I found because I found For Winter Fire first. It was just, I have a feeling I saw it somewhere and it just looked neat and I bought it on a whim, and just, yeah, it's an amazingly good album. I didn't really think of it as Death Doom, but it's interesting because it does have that, especially the second one, Gaguna Gap, has that real cosmic vibe, which is something I don't associate with Death Doom. Like we've talked about, it tends to be a lot more overall downtrodden in its attitude, and that album, yeah, it has more of a mystical quality to it in particular. They both do, but especially the second one. But you're right, though. I mean, in terms of, you know, the performances, they do fit. It's just, yeah, the atmosphere is kind of more unique for them. But yeah, that was a cool pick, Marty. Really good band. I'm guessing you still have copies of those in the bind room distro. Some folks were asking in the chat, like, "Wait, what band is this? How do you spell it?"
Yep, I still have a bunch of copies of. Well, I've got both For Winter Fire and Gununga Gap in the distro, or in the web shop. So go check out the bind room web shop. I put the spelling in the chat: SEIDR.
Yep, yeah, I did too for folks. So yep, those are available, and they are both very good albums. The second one's kind of long.
It's a 2 CD. It's a 2 CD
Yeah.
long. Yeah,
It's a long recording. It's a good one. So if folks feel that's a little too daunting, start with For Winter Fire. That's a fantastic album.
Yep. All right, Peter.
Okay, so I'll try and reclaim some metal cred here. I will go from gothic-y to heavier stuff to try and balance it out. So my next pick, I'll try and reclaim some cred here, and that's Sweden's Eternal Darkness, Total Darkness. So this is on the ultra slow, ultra dark, dank, colossal side of Death Doom. It's a Swedish band. This is a compilation. Came out probably about 20 years ago now, of all their demos and EP. Because the band originally broke up in the mid-90s, and they sounded nothing else like Swedish death metal at the time. They did reform and released their first proper album last year, which it was a self-titled, which made my album of the year. And then the day it dropped, according to Metal Archives, they broke up. But I was checking it today, and apparently they're active again. So I'm not sure what's going on there. But I don't know if you guys have ever heard this one here, but it really is dark.
It rings a bell, but I can't.
I've seen the cover. I've seen people showing it, but I've never heard it. Yeah.
Maybe I heard it long ago, but yeah.
If you like Red Cooley and bands like that, actually, if you like, pick this. It probably goes alongside it. Moondark, another Swedish Death Doom band. This is their original demo. It was called The Shadow Path. And again, this is a band that also broke up but then reformed and released an album in the last couple of years as well. The very first album, their debut. But again, not really sort of dark side of the style.
All right. A lot of people are championing that one as well, so that would be one I better write down as well. God damn it.
I'm just preparing for more gothic-y stuff I'm going to show.
No, it's good. I mean, we talked about that at the beginning. Death Doom, you know, has those two sides to it. It has that, you know, gothic side, and then it has that Coffins side, which Coffins is not a gothic band. But yeah, you definitely have that. And I think this next band I'll show is closer to the Coffins style, and nothing too gothic about it. Picked Druid Lord, band out of Florida. I think this is their second album, if I remember right. It's called Grotesque Offerings. And again, the cover art, this is that slimy side of Death Doom.
Cool cover.
Yeah, cool cover, cool logo. I like the, I think it shows up better on the inside of the digipack. But yeah, kind of a cool logo as well. It looks like it's going to be one of those, very wet, slimy sounding ones, but the production stuff in this is actually quite good. It's relatively clean. Vocals are they're heavy and guttural, but relatively decipherable too. It's not as dank as it looks like it might come across. This was sort of just blind buy several years ago. I was like, it looks neat, and it was really cheap. So I was like, sure, let's throw that in the cart and give it a whirl. And it turned out actually quite good. Haven't spun it in a while, and they've done, I think, at least one album since this, if I remember right. But I haven't. If so, I have not heard it. But yeah, Druid Lord fits into that Death Doom mold pretty nicely. Emphasis on the mold, maybe here. Yeah, take that for what you will. But I don't have too much to say about this because I haven't played it in a couple of years. But a cool band, and I was pleasantly surprised. It was one when I got it's like, this may just be $5 or so. I'm throwing down the drain on something that's going to be kind of amateurs. But no, they have a really good, solid sound in the style. So again, maybe for fans more of the Coffins side of things compared to the gothic romantic side of things.
Oh, that's right. Pete from Asheron. That's Pete from Asheron's band.
I knew there was a connection to somebody, and I drew
Thanks,
a
Evan.
total blank of it. Thank you for pointing that out. Yeah, there you go.
All right.
All right, Marty, what you got next?
Well, let's go back to Finland here.
Always a good idea.
Always want to say Acidophilus, but this is Asphodelus. God damn it.
Asphodelius?
Asphodelus.
Asphodelus, okay.
With Stygian Dreams. This
I've seen this band a lot, but I know nothing about it.
Excellent.
This thing puts me in mind of Dance of December Souls, Catatonia, but vocals aren't maybe as black metal-y, but the music, it's got that kind of enchanted melody lines that come in and out. Heavy. They do a lot with their song structures on here so that it doesn't get boring. So it's a little bit more adventurous at times, but still I would lump this. It's got the Death Doom vibe to it, but with the Northern European atmosphere, I guess you could say. This is the only one. This is their latest, I believe. Let me look here. Nope, I'm wrong. This is their debut. There's a new one called Sculpting from Time. That was their last one. This came out in 2019. I don't know. Yeah, that's right. But this is one that Ben Brain Smasher turned me on to. I think he did a review for this on the channel, and as I was harvesting clips, I'm like, this is pretty killer. And it turned up cheap somewhere. I'm like, yep. It definitely has a Dance of December Souls vibe. Definitely check it out. And Peter.
Yeah, I really like that album too. I got the follow-up, but I haven't really listened to it as much as the debut.
They stay in the same vibe, or did they change a bit?
I think it was similar from what I can remember. I think I probably listened to it once or twice. And
Yeah.
I would say shelved it, but I put it in one of my cars.
Yeah. Yep.
One scene that I'm a big fan of, and then particularly in the 90s for Death Doom, and they kind of did it their own way, was the Czech scene, and the sort of Eastern European but Czech and Slovak scene. And there's a whole load of bands. There's one called Hypnotic Scenery. I didn't pull their debut. It's called Vacuum, but it's excellent. But the one I did, I picked a few here, but one I did pick was a band called Love History. And this is their debut EP called Desires.
The name of the band is Love History.
Yeah.
Oh, I think I should kick my own self in the balls if I wanted to join the band Love History.
That's one there. So. But lots of violin. But it is heavy. They do mix in the death. It is still Death Doom. But these guys like to mix in a lot of the melancholic, sort of dramatic stuff. Like say a lot of violins and stuff like that there, and flutes and stuff. So
Cool.
It is an interesting scene. There's a couple more I'll show from it. One album in particular, which I think is really good.
It's probably the one I have sitting over here. Okay. I'll say, why don't you grab that one you're talking about?
Yeah, I got that.
Alan, while he's doing that, we'll put you up there.
All right. This just came out a year or two ago, and cool release, a little different take on Death Doom. It's a band called Slime Lord with their debut album Chytridiomycosis Relinquished. And yes, I did nail that because I know how to pronounce that word, oddly enough. But this is a side project from the guys in Cryptic Shift, who've gotten a lot of attention this year for their over-the-top progressive death metal sophomore release. But in between their two progressive death albums, they did a Death Doom side project called Slime Lord. It's a $20 spin release. No surprise there. Really, really cool cover artwork on it. Very eye-catching, very colorful. And it has a lot of the Death Doom qualities, but these guys, as anybody who's heard Cryptic Shift know, they're insanely talented musicians. They can do some crazy stuff, and they will basically forge their own sound. They're not really trying to sound like anybody. They're just incorporating a lot of influences and really meshing them together. They're kind of different from other things. A lot of times if people are thinking progressive death metal these days, they might think of something like Blood Incantation, where it's got parts of progressive music interspersed with death metal. And some people really enjoy that, and other people find it a little bit lame. It's like you're not a prog death band. You're playing death metal for 3 minutes and then prog metal for 5 minutes, and then you're just playing death metal again. You're switching styles. You're not blending them. Cryptic Shift finds ways to actually mesh them. And they kind of do the same thing here with their Death Doom project. I thought at first, maybe this was just their kind of attempt to go slumming it a bit, make something that was going to be like a little more knuckle dragging for fun in between the big sci-fi Odyssey albums. But no, they put a lot of work into this one. And once again, they make it their own style. This doesn't sound exactly like, anything that came before it. It's not exactly Disembowelment, and it's not exactly Asphyx or Coffins or anything else. Once again, they're really putting their own spin on it, and I definitely appreciate that. Death Doom, I think, as we've seen tonight, something that's been really cool in the discussion is there's a wider variety of Death Doom out there than it may appear at first glance. I think to a lot of people, Death Doom boils down to it's Hooded Menace or it's My Dying Bride. But we've seen there's a lot of room for interpretation in between. And Slime Lord, I'm not going to go as far as saying they've reinvented Death Doom or anything, but they've definitely put their own stamp on it. And that alone makes it worth checking out. The fact that they did it really, really well and quite convincingly makes it even more worth checking out. I was a little late to this album. It got some chatter when it came out, and I just wasn't in the mood for something like that. But I circled back to it several months later, and it pretty quickly clicked with me that, this is really, really interestingly done without becoming so progressive or obtuse that you can't even recognize what it is. It's Death Doom. It's just very unique, and you wouldn't expect anything less from that group of musicians.
All right. Well, this is another band that I would kind of put in. I wouldn't necessarily say these guys are jumping around from style to style. They're pretty much in this realm, but I'd compare them to borrowing from the Disembowelment playbook a lot like Worm did during that Gloomlord era. But this is the Necrotic Doom demo on CD by Spectral Voice.
Yeah.
I put this on and I'm getting into it, and all of a sudden the Disembowelment riffs come in, which shouldn't be a bad thing. Shouldn't bother me as much as it did for some reason. I don't know why. Yeah, I have that one here too, but I think the demo is a little bit more on the Death Doom side. They get a little bit busier on the next one here and there. But it's good. It's really well recorded. It's very dirty. Again, they're borrowing from that Australian playbook, but it just isn't as innovative to me. Not that everything has to be. I'm not going to sit here and say it shit needs to be unique. Everybody, embrace your influences. That's fine. But some of the riffs are feeling pretty direct. Like they really almost note for note on some of them, which that bugs me. That kind of bugs me. But
It's fair.
yeah. Would you want to follow up on that, Alan?
Nope. I would agree.
Okay. Peter.
Okay, yeah. So that band from Czechia, or you call it these days, is Forgotten Silence. Did you pick it too? Nice.
Yep.
What I do love is I love their demo too. Though it's probably more on the Death Doom side, you can get the hints of the experimentation, but this here is something else. And the band went on, like, they're still going as far as I know, but they had a run of albums in the late 90s that were really good. But this is where you get progressive avant-garde elements starting to come into the Death Doom style. I think that at one point there's even like the song, there's like a xylophone solo.
Yep.
It's that 10-minute song right in the middle of it. And there's like really jazzy bass lines going on throughout it. A lot of different tempo shifts and twists and turns in the music. Well, it's an album that's like nearly 70 minutes long, but it's for me. I'm immersed the whole way through. I'm engaged. It's over in no time, and it's an album I try to revisit as often as I can.
So you would put this in the Death Doom. I pulled it too, thinking Death Doom, and I haven't listened to this thing in fucking forever. So I started listening to it a bit today. I'm like, this almost feels like a death metal band doing a bunch of, like you said, the jazz thing. There's some doomy parts, but I think they're really kind of in a more of a mid-paced. I don't know. I pulled it and set it off to the side. I didn't know where to classify it after I revisited it, but
I think I was torn between that and the demo, because the demo you can definitely hear that they're a Death Doom band and started out, and they've obviously got a bit more experimental as it went on.
Right on. No, it's a good pick though. I saw it on a couple lists. I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. I grabbed it and I'm like, yeah, this is definitely in there. And I started listening to it. I'm like, shit, it's killer. I'm like, why haven't I listened to this in so long? It's an innovative, cool release, but cool stuff. Good pick, Alan. And I'll be right back.
All right. We'll go to Sweden for this pick. Really long-running band. They've got a lot of albums. I had no idea their discography was so deep until I looked into them a few years ago. It is Rune Magic.
Excellent.
Yeah, this is either I think it came out in 2023, Beyond the Cenotaph of Mankind. They've already got 2 more albums out since this one. They had a long hiatus, it looks like, for years. But since then, they've really very steadily kept putting out albums. They've got one coming out. I don't think it's come out yet this year. Let me double check. I think it comes out in another couple of months. That's on Hammerheart, if I remember right.
I think it has come out already.
Let's
I'm pretty
see.
sure I picked it up.
After Chaos, it's listed over here as a September release, but maybe it's already making the rounds overseas. Maybe that's a U.S. release date. I'm not sure. So yeah, I've only heard a few albums in this band's catalog, but they seem to be consistently really solid. And this was another one. I feel they probably fit in the Death Doom category, but I could see some people maybe wanting to call them slower death metal. And they may be a band that changed styles because, like I said, there's a gap where I don't know if they completely broke up or just went on a long hiatus. And maybe the earlier stuff has a slightly different style than what they've done in more recent years, like this one. This one I reviewed for Heavy Metallurgy when it came out, and thought, it was a really solid album. I've gone back to it a few times. It's held up well. But Peter, is there early stuff in this same style? Did they sort of shift sounds at any point? I haven't had a chance to dig very deep into their catalog.
That's one I picked. So that's from 99 or 2000, trying to remember. I suppose when I first found, because they were signed to Century Media, so they were well promoted, more in the death metal side. But I think as they went into the 2000s, they started adding more of that doom element, and this kind of stayed like that since. So that you're right, Alan. There was a period of
there was a hiatus for a while. But from what I can recall, isn't it just the one guy in the band now? I think a lot of the members left recently.
That's a good question. I'm not sure what their lineup is.
Well, I know the main guy, very prolific writer. There was a million rune magic, right? And he was also in another band called Death Witch.
Yeah,
Nikki, was it Nikki Terror or something? I can't remember his name.
I do not know. Yeah.
But I was surprised to see him come back, and he's back at it. There's since you've done that review for that one album, there's like 2 more albums after that.
Yeah, there's one that came out like the year after that, and we were Peter and I were checking. It looks like there's one that either just came out overseas or is coming out a little bit later this year. So yeah, he definitely cranks stuff out. And I've been seeing like more. It's a band that definitely has a fan base. When you look around, there are some people that are really into that band, and I've been noticing more and more of their titles popping up in more distros over the past 6 months or so. So whether they're getting reissued or just more people are picking up on the band and wanting, they're getting more requests for it. So places are starting to stock them more. They definitely seem to be getting on people's radar a little bit more, which is cool to see.
Yep. All right.
Rune Magic's my pick, Marty. So now it's your turn.
Well, since people have been mentioning them, let's talk about Funereal. Beneath the Columns of Abandoned Gods. This is an earlier release, and their latest one just came out this year. I can't never fucking remember the name. Beckoning the Void of Eternal Silence.
There's the void again.
There's the void. Where's the goat? Is the goat behind one of these trees? I don't know, but
it's not a liminal void, at least.
You can. This is another one you can make the case. Is this just a death metal band that plays slow sometimes, or they do have the Death Doom vibe and crawl? I think they do pick up the pace on occasion, and especially they're really working in nice moments of the keyboards. A nice touch added to this type of. It gives it more of an evil vibe, and then they got the dude from Worm on guitar. He's a fantastic shredder. Great guitar player. So, there's a weird contrast of this heavy, down-tuned death doom, then all of a sudden really like flowery guitar solo, but it's cool. It kind of breaks you out of the trance a little bit, but yeah, man. And I would also throw in, well, we'll get to that later. What time is it? Oh, maybe I'll talk about it now. Another one you could lump in to that whole realm too is Disma.
Yeah.
This Towards the Megalith. Absolutely crushing death doom. Production is so heavy. Craig Pillard on vocals, his voice, just absolutely demonic and booming. Again, is it death doom? I maybe more death metal, but they play slow. I would put them in the death doom category. But yeah, Funereal, Disma, good shit. Peter.
Yeah. I grabbed this one. It wasn't, it isn't my next pick, but I grabbed it because I was going to see what your opinion of it was, if you know it. Do you know Fulsion?
I've seen the name. I may have heard the band in the past, but I've never heard that record.
Yeah, because I was in 2 minds because like, is this just slow death metal? That's kind of quite heavy, but I've gone for another US pick, and an early one, Sorrows, Hatred and Disgust.
Yep.
Which came out on Roadrunner. And I believe the guy that they broke up shortly after this, from what I can remember. I think they've reformed because one of the guys is quite active on Instagram. Because when I posted this, he used to send me a message saying about.
Yeah, they did an album a year or two ago. You're right, I forgot about that. But they did put out some new stuff.
Yeah. So for a band like that to be on Roadrunner was interesting. They probably weren't getting
very interesting. Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Oh wait, it's my turn. It's my turn, isn't it? Yeah.
No, it's my turn. I'm after Peter. But yeah, I completely forgot about Sorrow. But yeah, they fit the definition well. All right, I'm trying to pick which one of these is Marty not going to show.
I restocked a little bit, so we only have 30 minutes left, so we're good.
Okay, well, I'm going to go with this one then. And this is one I didn't think of at first, but somebody had mentioned, is like, yeah, actually, yeah, they probably do work in this vein. They just have kind of a unique identity, so I didn't immediately latch onto them. But Necros Christos, yeah. Doom of the Occult. It literally says Doom in the name. It has to be Death Doom.
Yep.
And again, this is a band, that again just draws off that kind of Celtic frost influence that we talked about earlier, whereas it's got the heaviness, not overly complicated, but riffs that are catchy, very heavy, and tons of atmosphere. Of course, that was always Necros Christos's thing, was having all these little interludes that some people find them fascinating and some people find them irritating, but they definitely added a certain atmosphere that was unique to the band. I picked this one as their second album because it had Doom in the name. So just kind of for fun, I like all their material. They were one of those very random bands that I latched onto for no particular reason. I saw the debut album reviewed somewhere, I guess, and it just sounded interesting and picked it up. And yeah, I was like, this is actually pretty cool. It was a very random one. I wasn't really listening to much stuff similar to that at the time of its release. They did the 3 albums. There's some demos and some EPs, stuff like that. Projects long since wrapped up, but members have gone on to do other things. One of the guys, at least one of the guys, is in that, is it Sigen project from Germany? Not sure the pronunciation of that one. You've mentioned it before, Marty.
Oh, Sigen?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's at least one of the guys from Necros Christos, right?
Yeah, the singer went on to be in Sigen, bass player.
Yeah.
Yeah. He
So,
played
yeah,
guitar. He plays guitar in Necros Christos, but he plays bass in Sigen, I believe, and sings.
Okay. Yeah. But yeah, you can still find a lot of the Necros Christos stuff poking around. A couple of the titles I think are hard to find, but stuff like Triune Purity and Right.
Impurity Rights.
Yeah, that one. Thank you.
That's my favorite. That's their best, in my opinion.
It's certainly like it's the entry point you want. It's the easiest one to get into. And you can still find copies of that one for a reasonable price. It's not one of these things that's become cult and underground to the point that everyone's run up the price and copies have disappeared. So Necros Christos, cool, kind of unique band. Really play into the mysterious occult side of things. Some people find it a little cheesy. If you're really sensitive to cheese, you might want to preview Necros Christos before getting too far into them, just to make sure it's not going to cross that line for you. But I can dig them, absolutely.
That album, the legendary track on that one is Necromantic Nun. Yes.
And the guitarist, his previous band to Necros Christos was Nox in Tempuesta.
Oh, I don't know that one.
Black metal band, really worth checking out. Now, their stuff may be a wee bit pricey to find these days because they're on a small label, but very good sort of black death metal.
All right. Kind of waiting to see if Alan showed this one, but I'm just going to blaze ahead with it. Celestial Season with Solar Lovers. This album, it is a very unsuspecting album. Obviously, you're named after a tea. Your name of the album is Solar Lovers. You got, the guy about to touch the golden gonad. All fine and dandy, but this album is a very warm. The guitar tone is very warm. A little groovy at times, which is funny because you got the Hoover sign. They changed it to Groover, so it's a groovy Death Doom experience here. But man, the vocalist never breaks away from the death vocals. He sings very good enunciation, and these songs are heavy, and they also do Ultravox cover of the song Vienna, which they did a great job on it. Great job on it. This is the Metal Blade reissue of this, the U.S. edition of it, and I always love this record. I have never heard any of their other stuff. This is the only one that I've ever come across. I know Forever Scarlet Passion, I think, is also held in high regard. But
It's good, and it's maybe closer to the quote unquote typical gothic Death Doom sound than that one is. Like you said, that one's got a really unique sound to it. But
it just
Forever
has
Scarlet
a flow and a pulse to it. It's so good.
Yeah.
It grooves. It's a groovy Death Doom record.
Yeah, Forever Scarlet Passion sounds much closer to, like, how to put it. It's the kind of thing that fit perfectly on those, like, Death is Just the Beginning kind of compilations from, like, the mid-90s. So it's good stuff, but does not sound like that album at all. And it's funny, Forever Solar Levelers, if folks think that sounds interesting, want to check it out. To this day, you can find that album for like $3 or $4. It must have sold terribly, and they must have printed just a bajillion copies, because it's always been easy to find dirt cheap. But it is a really, really cool listen.
All right, Peter, you're back.
I think we probably could have done at least 1 or 2 episodes just on the Dutch scene. I have so much I haven't done tonight, like Mystic Charm and Beyond Death and bands like that. Maybe I might be stealing this from one of you, so I was been waiting to see if you were going to show it or not. So I want some done EP from Stephen O'Malley and Greg Anderson's Thor's Hammer.
Oh, right on.
Oh, I'll put it in the chat.
With a Norwegian exchange student,
Runhild,
who was fizzing in the US at the time, and the harder for the band. I think she was only like 19 or something.
Mm-hmm.
But this is crushingly heavy. This is that end of Death Doom that again I mentioned back with the sort of like Shadow or Moon Dark and the Eternal Darkness side of things. And incidentally, the very first release on Southern Lord. So it was back in '98.
Yeah, she appears to be a tiny lady, and her voice is just pretty crushing.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah. She can go between the cleans and the growls. It's amazing.
Yeah. Very cool. Good pick. Ellen.
All right. I was just thinking this was in your stack, Marty, but as you said, it's getting late, so we'll show them if we've got them. This is a band from the UK that kind of fit in with that whole Peaceville 3 scene, but they didn't stay active long enough, maybe to cement a legacy. But Enchantment. Dance the Marble.
I totally forgot to even pull that one. Yeah.
Okay, I've been thinking the whole time, don't show it because Marty probably pulled it.
I forgot to pull it, yeah.
Glad we got it worked in. Yeah, this one, there's a My Dying Bride influence. I think it was kind of clear they were operating inspired by that style, and admittedly so. It's not like they tried to hide it or anything, but they did a good job with it. It definitely works and stands on its own 2 feet. I really like the comeback album they did just a few years ago too. Blanking on the title of it. I can see the cover art. It's got like the ballerina with like the cement block underwater on the cover. Crap. Chat. Somebody in the chat will know what the title is. But yeah, they made the one album, and then the band just kind of fell apart. Guys went in different directions, and so there wasn't really a chance to follow up and become entrenched as part of that scene as it developed. And it could have been interesting because, as we've discussed, at least for a period of time, those Peaceville bands all went in different directions. Paradise Lost, lost all the death stuff and got into electronica. Anathema moved more into some kind of alternative post-rock band. My Dying Bride for a while there, was getting pretty far out there before coming back and embracing their inner Death Doom child. There might have been room for someone like an Enchantment to just stay the course right through the middle of that and attract a lot of the fans who got kind of disillusioned with what some of those other bands were doing at the time.
Cold Soul Embrace.
There we go. Thank you. It was right on the tip of my tongue. I could not get it out. So yeah, Cold Stone Embrace is also a really, really good album of the style. Yeah, and of course, Mark's been on YouTube quite a bit over the years. Nice guy. Mm-hmm. We've talked to him a few times about trying to get him on, but logistics not easy to schedule guys from overseas. Again, we really appreciate Peter taking the time to
take one for the team here,
staying up into the dawn over there. But yeah, Enchantment is one that got overlooked. This was one of those albums I knew about back in the day, but never could lay my hands on a copy. So I only managed to pick it up, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago, and really glad I did. It's another one, even though it's an older album, it's not that hard to track down a copy for a reasonable price. So no reason not to give it a listen if you like that peaceful style of Death Doom.
All right. I have only got one of this band. Well, I did have two, but I might still have the promo for it, actually. Anyway, October Tide. This is Tunnel of No Light.
Someone had to mention it. Yep.
I think this has got members of Catatonian. I know it's got a member from Uncanny in it who were a killer Swedish death metal band. I really dug that band.
They really sound like Catatonia, if nothing else.
Yeah, they if they don't have a member that went on to Catatonia or was in Catatonia, they definitely are
Influenced.
They're sharing a dinner plate for sure. They're ordering the same things. Yeah, this is one I have not listened to a lot, but this is the first I've probably touched it since I bought it. I got it for $18 in some sale somewhere. I don't know. It's good. Again, it's not a style to listen to, but it's depressive, a little atmospheric, and definitely borrowing from Catatonia's playbook a little bit here and there. But yeah, pretty solid record regardless on Cyclone Empire and License from Pulverized, which is weird. Yeah. I wouldn't see this as initially a Pulverized record.
No. That's true.
Release,
yeah.
But
yeah, folks definitely recommend that one. A lot of folks enjoy it. To me, they were a little too close to Catatonia for comfort.
That's the debut, Rain Without End.
I also have the one with the face in the water, Gray Dark Matter, or I can't know what that
Gray something, yeah.
Gray Waters, or I don't remember. It's
Gray
got
Skies.
A face coming out of like a gray water looking thing. I don't know.
Yeah. I think Frederick Norman, he's revived the band after he left Catatonia, so they're still going.
Oh yeah. Okay. All right, Peter.
Okay, I'm going to go to Australia then for this pick. It's the second album by this band. Nothing too original because once you hear it, you can hear the influence of My Dying Bride. But what I think is interesting is that the vocalist, I can hear hints of Vincent Kavanagh from Anathema. And that's the second album from Cryptal Darkness. It's called They Whispered You Have Risen. So this came out in 1999, just at the end of the century then. This was a band that was originally signed to, had early stuff on Arctic Serenades, the Norwegian label, of who had signed Funereal back in the day. I remember speaking to Ben about that label. The guy who runs it, I don't know if you guys know that label, but the guy who ran it was a guy called Contreras, and he admits himself. I got chatting to him online because he's an IT guy now, and he says he had no clue how to run a label. He ended up owing the band's money, and he ended up having to flee from Norway to go live in Scotland.
Huh.
Huh. Yep. Oop. All right, Ellen.
All right. Let's go back to Chicago. We've been there a few times tonight. I never thought of that as a Death Doom town, but apparently there's a scene there. This time we'll mention Avernus. This is a compilation of some stuff they did. Avernus is one of those bands that kind of changed styles. By the time you get to their first full-length album called Of the Fallen, they're really more of a gothic band and almost more of a gothic rock band. The metal components were falling out pretty quickly. But they did a lot of demos prior to that, and some of the earlier ones, like, let me get the title right, because I always get it wrong. It's like Delicate Trace of Red. Yeah, Delicate Tracing of Red, and some of these early demos, they had a lot more of the sort of Peaceville 3 style of gothic death doom. It seemed like that was a clear influence on them. And for a while, they were one of these bands that their stuff was traded a lot in the tape trading circles. And this was a period where I was doing more tape trading. So, yeah, I would get different songs and demos featuring Avernus stuff, which was all pretty cool sounding. But then, yeah, as you got closer to the album coming out, some of those demos you started to hear, the sound was getting cleaned up. They were only using cleaner vocals. And I still like the debut album. I think they're still good at that style. It just wasn't a Death Doom project at that point anymore. So this one, it's not a very... They had so much stuff. It feels like they could have done like a bigger 2 CD kind of anthology or something. And maybe there's one of those out there. This is just one I picked up for like $2 or $3. Stumbled into it online at some point years ago. But covers a little bit of stuff from some different early periods. So it's an okay, introduction. Kind of dip your toe in and see what they sounded like.
Good band. Good band. I know that Sadness demo or release they put out was a big deal when that thing dropped.
Yep. That one got a lot of attention too. So, but yeah, I'm thinking by the time they did maybe the Anastasia demo, or maybe it's one after that. Again, I'm looking at the list. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 5 demos and a couple of singles and splits before they got to their album. So there's a bunch of stuff there. But yeah, by the time you get to like a Farewell to Eden and stuff, I think you were definitely losing the death part. But again, I think they really just moved more into the gothic side of things. So it wasn't like they even just stuck to traditional doom or anything. But yeah, a cool band, deserved a mention here, I think.
So yeah, we mentioned multiple bands from the Chicagoland area tonight, and Scott kind of sums it up nicely. We all grew up on Trouble here, so yeah, we like the Zoom. Yep. Makes sense.
Yeah, and it's funny because it's not the style we're talking about tonight, but even a lot of the traditional metal projects from Chicago in the 1980s had that Trouble influence, and they were really good at it. Most of those bands didn't necessarily make it past the demo stage, but there were a bunch of them, acts like Battalion and Warcry that were playing something you might think of these days as closer to U.S. power metal, but they all had that very doomy vibe to them. They were pulling from Trouble, and it's just a really cool sound. Enforcer was another one that did some really cool tracks from Chicago that just other scenes in the mid-'80s in the U.S., New York bands didn't have that doomy aspect. California bands didn't really have that doomy aspect. Chicago locked that in, and even the bands that didn't necessarily get a record contract put out some really cool demos, and they all have a very distinct doomy sound to them.
Yeah. All right. Well, I was waiting for Peter to pull it because he has the shirt on, but the debut Saturnus album, this is Paradise Belongs to You. This is a great doom band from Denmark, and at this point in the game, there was a guy in it playing guitar named Kim Larson, who went on to do the neo-folk band of The Wand and the Moon, which this is the only Saturnus record I have, but I have multiple of The Wand and the Moon records. He just kind of hit the Death in June mark pretty well, a lot less experimental, but yeah, solid. But that's that. But this here, great death doom, again, has the European vibe and atmosphere to it. They are just really good at this shit.
Mm-hmm. That's a cool album. Yep.
Yeah, Peter, you want to follow up on that?
Yeah, I was going to say, did you cover that for Album Club?
We did.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I pulled the second one, Martyr, with such a death doom cover.
Yeah. All right. Okay, we're up, Peter. This might be our last round, so if you want to double, triple up on things, you're more than welcome to do so.
Okay, well, since they were mentioned earlier on,
Lobotomized,
yeah, their Immense Intense Suspense album, which is a bit of another one that's kind of a wee bit avant-garde too for the time. The Dutch scene debut album from Officium Triste.
nay Vivan,
Hmm.
who are this band have been going strong. They released a really good album back in 2024, but this is a really good start. It's kind of middle of the road, but it wouldn't be in the gothic side, but it'd probably be just kind of following on from the Peaceful 3 type thing. I suppose this another American band that hasn't been mentioned, the ones of the Carrion.
Right on.
Their album, and I thought I grabbed it Ceremonium, but yeah, it's a bit of a mess here. You should see my kitchen table. It's worse.
You're gonna make. You have to clear. Your wife's gonna go like this to make pancakes in the morning. Clear it
Yeah.
right off, one big swoop.
So no, that'll do me. I think I've shown quite a few. So.
All right, Alan.
All right, I'll show a few here that I had left over, and some of these are ones again that I don't think they fit neatly into Death Doom, but we'll kind of flip through them as food for thought. This album has always struck me as having a very doomy component, and it may just be the finish in them, but Amorphous specifically on Tales from the Thousand Lakes is always, obviously, they come out with the death metal scene, and already here they were transitioning into something different. And I think by the next album, they've cleaned up the sound to the point where it's not really death metal anymore, but Tales has something that's doomy-ish to me for sure.
Thanks, Bob, for the super chat. We appreciate you, man. Thanks for watching.
Bob. Thank you very much. Hope you've enjoyed the show. So, yeah, I wouldn't call Tales Death Doom, but I do often find myself reaching for an album like that when I'm in the mood for something doomy more than something deathly. So there's that. Tiamat, around the second album. Tiamat's another one of these bands that kind of migrated on out of metal circles and got much more into other styles of music and did well with it. Earlier stuff, they've also got traces of black metal in their sound early on, but around the Astral Sleep, they're mixing and balancing things again. There's something that's a little just darker and slower at times here. Really good. I like this album a ton. It's one of my favorites from them. Not Death Doom, but maybe it's adjacent somewhere. Another band that did kind of the same trajectory was Therion around the time of Hodragon, Homagus. They're getting out of. They started, again, just very kind of Swedish death metal sound and did it well. But then they start moving into other territory with Beyond Sanctorum and this album before getting into the classically inspired stuff that they made a living off of for a long time.
Blame Celtic Frost again for that shit.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but a different era of Celtic Frost.
Yeah.
That's into the Pandemonium era Celtic Frost, influencing that part of Therion. But was this part of Therion's catalog maybe a little influenced by the Morbid Tales era? Maybe. We'll end with a couple of more recent ones. Mortiferum. They've released a couple of albums that, again, maybe they're really slow death metal, but I think they're atmospheric enough that I want to. I'm okay calling them Death Doom, but if folks keep them on the death metal side of the fence, I'm not going to die on that hill for that battle. Cool project. They do a really good job of hitting that just kind of unsettling vibe that I like in this style. And finally, this one's for Simon. He's been in the chat quite a bit tonight with some good comments. And this band doesn't fit neatly into any category. They're just really good. And they have, blackened elements, death elements, doomy elements. And that is Jade. This was their debut from a few years ago, Pacification of Death. Doesn't fit neatly into Death Doom, but it doesn't not fit neatly into Death Doom either. And if it does, this would be more leaning towards like the Brave Murder Day style of Death Doom. There, what does Simon got to say about
Yes,
this?
Alan, yes.
Okay, yeah, there you go. I didn't forget. I was it was there, Simon. I was going to make sure I got it in for you. So yeah, if you like the Brave Murder Day kind of thing, Jade is an excellent band. The second album's really good. Demo's good. They did a split in between the two albums, and the tracks on the split are really top notch. So they're technically an international band. They've got members from a couple of different countries. But yeah, I've been really, really impressed with everything they've done to date. hopefully they've got a bright future ahead of them. That was the end of my stack. Marty, what would you like to wrap us up with?
Mentioned earlier in the chat, and I agree. We're gonna have to give some props to the ladies in the scene, and you got In Death We Meet with Dorketta. Also, Mythic, Mourning the Winter Solstice.
Oh, yeah.
The lead singer from this one, Dana, would end up going on and doing Demonic Christ, a little more black metal flavored. But here, her and Mary was other.
Spider.
She went on to be in November's Doom. Yeah, Mary Beelch. Dana Duffy and Terry Hagen on drums. You know, they didn't really, they weren't super exciting, but just authentic, good, old school.
Yeah.
It's probably just death metal, but they did play slower, and they did have a bit of the Doom vibe. As same with Dorketta. I mean, in a lot of ways, these two are, you know, good allies as far as sound and style. And this shit was just really solid death metal, slower pace, again, from the old school vibe, and completely
that
appreciate
Mythic was
that.
another one that the 7-inch back in the day, Relapse could not give copies of that thing away for $5, and now it'd probably cost you $100 to get a copy
Exactly.
of it.
Yeah. And this is kind of funny. Going through looking at lists before, this band showed up on multiple Death Doom lists, and I don't think I believe it. 1914. I don't think these guys are Death Doom. They strike me more as like the doomier side of hypocrisy.
Yeah, I noticed that too, Marty, and I agree with you. I don't hear it for 1914.
Yeah, it's just weird. It was on like not just one list; it was on multiple lists that I was checking out. And I still think this is a Death Doom record. I know Alan kind of put it in the funeral box. Yeah, this is Mournful Congregation with June Frost. This to me, it's those heavy metal solos in this thing. It really kind of stands this band apart. It's just weird to get in this really kind of suffocating Doom vibe, Death Doom vibe, and all of a sudden have this ripping solo out of nowhere. It's like, oh, where'd this come from? Wrong album, guys. But no, it gives a little bit of dynamics and color and flavor to something that could get a little redundant after a while.
It's what does make Mournful Congregation avoid sinking too far into the Maya. Yeah.
And the last one.
Sorry, do you think that was an influence then on Worm?
Maybe.
Oh, that's a good question. I could see that.
Yeah, those solos, it could very well be. I can hardly read this. The Boats of the Glen Carrig by Ahab. None of those bands, Death Doomy, but they're a little bit more expansive. Again, very good with telling a tale, and conceptually, you know, the sea, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea is this is the one, isn't it? No, it's the one after this. And then there's the Moby Dick tale on one of them. I can't remember the name of that one either.
Leviathan,
yeah. Solid band. There maybe again a little funeral mixed in there as well, but it's where the lines kind of get blurred a bit for me. But
yeah, I've usually thought of Ahab as funeral, but I don't know them really well, so that may not be a good call on my part.
I've got one here. I forgot to show, since I may as well shout out our own bands here in Ireland. So I know you guys covered Morning Beloved in the album club. So I went for a different pick, a band called Arcane Sun. And this is their self-titled album from 1998. So this band, they used to be known as the Fifth Dominion, and they only ever released demos. But they took some of that material with some new material and then released this in 1998. And the band featured the vocalist Paul Kearns. So if you know the band Solstice from the UK, you know Rich Walker.
Yep.
So Paul Kearns sang with them for most of the last decade. I think he left in 2019.
Okay.
So if you know him, he's a very powerful voice, very emotional voice. But back then he could also do the growls as well. So, and this mixes up different kind of styles, but there's definitely Death Doom here with a bit of thrash as well.
Cool.
Right on. Well, there you have it. We 3 hours of Death Doom ish.
Yep.
Some blurred lines here and there as well.
No, but yeah, that's part of the conversation. And
Yep.
of course, there's tons of stuff we didn't get to mention. Ain't nobody's yelling at us for skipping Swallow the Sun in the chat yet.
Yeah.
But no, yeah, cool conversation and a lot of interesting stuff. I've got a list of things to check out this weekend. Hope other folks have also caught on to some things that they want to investigate further. And Peter, definitely want to thank you again for your time. I know it's but what time is it for folks? Just to be clear, what time is it locally for you right now?
5?
It's just turned 5 a.m.
Yep.
Yeah. So Peter has basically pulled the all-nighter to join us for this one, and we really do appreciate the sacrifice for it.
We do.
It was an honor. It was grateful for the invite to come on the show. I've been watching since you first started.
Oh yeah, yes, you're one of the old school guard for sure.
Absolutely.
And great to have you on board for the evening. Marty, show notes, things we want to make sure people know about for the weekend.
Yeah, there's one thing tomorrow. I am doing another. Hold on, I gotta find it. I'm doing another radio show over on the Discord server. It is Radio Metallurgy episode 3. There's the thing. It will be. Oh, let me kill that. It will be at 5 o'clock Eastern time, which about 10 o'clock your time, Peter, I guess. And on the 4th of July, I'm sure most of you are going to be out doing fun things. I have no life, so I will be have a playlist prepared. I'll be in the one of the video chat rooms in the Discord server. Link in the description. Go check out our Discord. It's a pretty cool community. And it's not going to be... It's a one and done type of thing. I will share the playlist when I'm done, so people want to check it out, they can. But it's just for the Discord show. It's a lot of fun. And I've always wanted to be a radio guy, and this isn't as good as that, but it's fun. We have a good time. We all hang out, talk about the music when we're all said and done, and go check out the Discord server. Good stuff. And let me get rid of that. Alan, how about you? I know you've been a busy bee this week.
Yeah, I've been recording a lot of videos, just kind of, getting a few things stockpiled for later in case I get busy. But no, nothing particular. There'll be a video over on Let's Talk Metal Tuesday morning, like there always is. I don't remember which one I've picked, because I recorded several, and I picked one of them to put up. I guess we'll find out Tuesday which one it's going to be. But
Right
yeah,
on.
folks, don't forget to go check out Sunday night. Mr.
Oh,
A's
shit,
in
yeah,
the
duh.
Audience, Shredbeard, Lee have all been hanging out tonight, and they've got a really fun show for you on Sundays, as always, on Shredbeard's channel.
8 o'clock. It's called Mayhem Sundays. Our buddies Miss A, Warhammer 666, and Shredbeard. They do it every week, and it's a fun show. Go check them out. Subscribe over there. And if you're new here, I've seen a few names in the chat tonight. Consider subscribing. We'd appreciate it. We're trying to hit the 8,000 mark for, I don't know.
Yep.
It's just another goal, I guess. So, cheers.
We get free beer cozies from YouTube if we hit 8,000.
Yeah. Yep. Next week we'll have Simon and Jeff from Mendicant Media, Simon from Explosive Action. We're going to be talking about our favorite and
Logan, the beer,
Oh, shit. That's
metal
right.
and beer snob. It's going to be a 5-man show next week.
Yep.
So
We're going to be talking about our favorites of the year thus far. So
we're doing our annual middle of the year, the best of 2026 so far. We'll cover the first 6 months, since the first 6 months are now in the history books.
Yep.
All the albums that you may have missed from January 1st up to June 30th. We'll tell you what our personal top 10s are at this point in the calendar year.
That's the show where I catch up on all the non-black metal from the year.
I haven't listened to a lot of new stuff this year, so my list is pretty sad right now. Another thing, too. I've been having a chat with Mr. King Fowley. He will soon be coming back on the show. Don't have a date yet, but it's going to be happening sooner than later. So
Yeah,
expect
King's
to see
got an
him
open
soon.
door policy. He's just so very busy with so many things, but we'll get him on when it fits the schedule.
We may even get that Scott from Cyanide on here if I can ever find a place to get a hold of him. I'll have to do a little bit better research. So everybody, anyway, Peter, thanks a bunch. Hang out. We're going to talk for a second. Cheers to all of you. Thanks a lot for all the support. We appreciate you. We'll see you next week.
Remember, eat the hot dog, throw the firecracker, not the other way around. That won't end well.
Exactly. I'm glad we got that sorted.